Hi, I'm Edwin.
And I am Jack, and welcome back
to the 950 Club.
Hey, 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 hey.
Woohoo! And on today's episode of the 950 Club, we'll be talking about Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
Yes, one of the most unique and most organic type of comedies and slice of life shows ever, in my whole opinion.
I agree, Jack. This is one of those shows I think that I had started to watch and was really kind of dumbfounded as to what I was watching.
Second viewing, I definitely had deeper appreciation, mainly because of how subtle it is in its ways.
It's very cute and it's very endearing.
Very.
And I think that if I recall correctly, you had watched it and you told me, Edwin, you have to watch this.
Yeah, and I felt like you would like it. It's a harmless show.
Well, it was before. It's an earlier show. So the anime released in 2017.
Yes.
And while I had gotten, this is when I was really just starting to get back into anime. And so I wasn't really sure how I felt about slice of life, especially a slice of life that involved like more fantasy elements to it.
Yeah, more fantasy, but also in a weird twist of fate, the main character herself, yeah, totally ordinary, totally of this world. So it's quite a fascinating pace.
Yeah, Kobayashi is kind of like that atypical office worker.
Like 100%. Like, oh my God, this is what an actual person is kind of thing.
Yeah, especially for like Japan, she works longer hours. She's always at the computer. She's always being dumped. A bunch of work is always being dumped on her.
Work is more than her living.
Yeah, and then afterwards, she's like, going out to drink with her coworkers.
Yeah, and it let off some steam. And she's technically a shonen, technically an otaku.
Very much so, but she has a specific
she's
kind of fandom.
That, and she's professional. She keeps it on the surface.
Yeah, I'm like, it doesn't come out unless she drinks.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was like, I don't know, Jack. Let me watch it. So I watched it, and I really fell in love with the characters.
Yeah.
I fell in love with Tohru and Kanna and Kobayashi.
Yeah.
And it was like you kind of couldn't help yourself because they're so endearing, and the moments are so like Tohru, especially Tohru.
Yeah.
She's so in love with Kobayashi, and she just wants Kobayashi's attention, and Kobayashi. It's not that Kobayashi is cold-hearted in any way, but she's just not used to this.
Yeah.
This isn't like the life that she's led.
No.
And I like that about the show in that while it has all these fantastical elements, the focus is about, family.
Yeah.
It's about Kobayashi growing up and essentially building her own family. It just happens to be with, a dragon.
Yeah, and the typical anime structure of family. And anime really dives into this. We're talking from all of top tier animes from Cowboy Bebop to, recent ones we reviewed, makeshift families, essentially.
Yeah.
And this one's like the ultimate makeshift family.
Well, I think this is, in an odd way, more traditional than...
More traditional than Cowboy Bebop, for example.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the family structure and the way it progresses.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a makeshift family, and I love that about anime. I love how anime, your friends get together, and that's essentially your family. Yeah. It's about families that you build.
Yes.
But to me, with Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, it feels more like Kobayashi's adult journey.
also of love and desire.
Yeah,
And,
where she goes out, she meets someone, they kind of become Tohru kind of becomes like the housewife
ultimately
to Kobayashi's kind of like
the father figure,
father figure,
father and mother. Yeah.
Father, mother. Well, she becomes a mother figure, like a father figure, mother figure to Kanna
Ultimately,
more than anything else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she goes from being single to living with Tohru to then having Kanna and then finding a place for them all to live.
Yeah. And this is like the first 2 episodes alone.
Yeah. And so it follows kind of like this traditional structure of like building a family.
From the ground up.
Yeah, and okay, it's not traditional in that they're all dragons.
Yeah.
And that they're not, Kanna's not actually their daughter, but she's a very young dragon.
Yeah.
But it's so cool to watch her go on that journey through this show.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like almost like watching Kobayashi's heart open.
Little by little.
Yeah, little by little, Kobayashi, because she's just not used to this. It's not that she doesn't want to engage, and it's not that, well, there are times where you feel like she doesn't want to be bothered by any of this.
Ultimately, she has had that type of scorn. I guess that rejection from society, too. And also kind of like what her living situation literally is. Work.
Yeah.
Work.
Nothing to come home to, yeah.
And she loves sleep, and like she's fine with it. Ultimately, without Tohru, she would have been fine with her previous life in a weird way.
I think she would have been fine with it in kind of like an ignorance is bliss kind of way.
Extremely.
In that she wouldn't have had any idea of how good life could be with other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the sad, almost like sliding doors kind of things about this.
Which really hits home for this show and its slice of life elements. And oh my God, like initially when I watched it, of course, there's always that swerve with anime, especially this show, because you initially think, oh, it's a dragon dressing up as Maid. What's up with that? Why is she human? This and that and then this. But up to the end of season 2, you know what it's all about. And it's a beautiful pace and a beautiful case studying in a way that you're just in this moment with this character, with Kobayashi. So it's one of those case studies where you actually get the slice of life of this person.
Well, yeah, because it's kind of like, it's kind of their journey.
Yeah, even Tohru. Yeah.
For all of them.
Yeah.
They go, all the characters, and that's one of the things I think we were talking about, how to focus on this show.
Yeah.
We didn't really want to go episode by episode, narrative by narrative.
Yeah.
Because I think to talk about it organically, you have to talk about the journey that these characters go on.
Yeah.
Tohru and her mistrust for humans, and her, like how her viewpoint of humans and how that changes over the course of the show, in that she's able to interact with other humans
and deal with them.
And well, yeah, her relationship with Kobayashi really helps her to develop like this different viewpoint of humans, and how she wants to deal with them, because at first it's like she wants to just burn the whole thing down.
Yeah. And part of the background, because mind you, for the setup for this as well, we also have to mention that, she can turn into human. She becomes a maid right on the doorstep of Kobayashi. That's the title of the episode there. It literally does it in the first instances there. It's just a matter of like, why is Tohru this special entity, this special dragon? That question gets answered later on. But, you're in for this pull right off the bat. And right off the bat, Tohru is very affectionate with Kobayashi.
Yeah. Well, I think that Kobayashi doesn't really remember what happened. And we don't really see that until we don't see like what played out between the two of them until almost the very end of the season.
Yeah.
First season. When we get like their meeting, because Kobayashi essentially goes out after work, gets completely shit-faced, and ends up in the forest, thinking that she might run into some bears.
Yep.
But no, she runs into a wounded dragon.
Yeah, it's kind of like shooing her away. Go away from human. I don't like humans. I don't like you. Like you should perish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because, I mean, Tohru's been through some stuff.
More than we would know, and we would find out. Yeah.
And so when Kobayashi removes, Kobayashi is so drunk that she's not like, essentially, she thinks
it's complete opposite of her normalcy in general.
Well, she thinks this is either a hallucination or a dream.
Yeah.
And so she essentially pulls the sword out of Tohru's back.
Yeah.
And, Tohru is so grateful that someone has helped her that she agrees to have a drink with Kobayashi.
In her human form, yeah.
Yeah. And then that's where their relationship begins.
Yeah.
And it's very endearing, and it's totally crazy.
Yeah. Also, ultimately with that first episode as well, because you see Tohru flying as a dragon.
Yeah.
In this gorgeous scene. It's almost like Ghibli in a weird way.
Oh yeah, this show is beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, the colors, the color palette
It pops. It pops.
It's pops, but at the same time it's kind of subdued.
It's his own style.
Yeah.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
And then especially with that beginning with this epic gorgeous dragon just flying through the sky like a Ghibli film. And you see a little point of view of Tohru looking at these maids, and they're outside the cafe dressing really nice.
And so she thinks, this is what I should dress like?
Yeah. It's just on a wild whim.
Well, because it's like, Kobayashi's like, when Kobayashi says, when Tohru says that she's completely alone in this world, and Kobayashi's like, well, do you have any place to stay?
Yeah, when she was drunk, yeah.
Yeah, and Toru's like, no. He's like, you should stay with me.
Yeah.
You should be my maid. It's like, what? Who says that?
Because Kobayashi, like I mentioned, she's kind of a closeted otaku. Her obsession ultimately is with maids.
Yeah, and it's like, what?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's more commonplace in Japan. I'm not 100% sure around here, like the general fascination with it. It's a story as all the time. People have a thing. It's just a matter of like, okay, I get it. There is even a geek, a fandom of that. So.
Well, maid cafes are a thing.
In Japan especially.
Well, I've seen them. More and more conventions have done them here.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Like, I think that recently, we're Chicago-based, so we've seen this fan expo show. They did a maid cafe. I believe C2E2 did one last year.
I believe they did as well, yes.
Anime Midwest, I think, had one.
Not sure about... Yeah, I don't think ASEN had it.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
But I'm pretty sure that this fan expo that just happened a few months ago, they did it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're seeing more of that here, not mainstream, but over there definitely.
Yeah.
But I thought it was just like, okay. And so whenever Kobayashi gets drunk, she wants to have this discussion about maids. And so I just thought that the insanity of asking someone to move in with you just to be your maid, it's like, that's the setup for a comedy if I ever heard one.
Oh yeah, and it could have been like an 80s comedy kind of thing too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're a dragon's my maid? What?
That would have worked.
It had an energy.
It had that 80s crazy energy where anything goes.
Yeah. Edwin alluded to initially, because this is such an organic and such a rise of a show. Initially, you don't see the family elements just yet, but you do see the love. You do see the affection right off the bat with Tohru.
Well, this is an interesting show because it's kind of like a girl love show.
Girl love, and dare I say, doesn't hit you in the hammer with it.
No.
None.
No. Well, some of Tohru's jokes.
The jokes. But I mean, it's not like it's this, like, okay, it's a very tough topic to talk about. I'm straight as an arrow. And, diving into something that is out of my boundaries, per se, quote unquote, artistically, how I view it.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Because the association, it is a thing nowadays, and we're not trying to dismiss anything with that. It's more of a sense of like, this is how they present it, and they do it pretty seamlessly.
Well, I think that it's not really, in an odd way, it's the point of the show.
Yes.
But it's not the point of the show.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah,
ultimately.
it's like, so I tried to watch, there was one I believe was called Orange.
Okay, yeah. I heard about that one.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the show was about. I started watching it. I'm like, maybe I don't want to watch this.
No.
It wasn't like I was like saying that I don't want to watch this type of show. It was just like I'm not sure that was the kind of representation of that.
Well,
Because I watched the night outside of the tricorner window.
Yes.
And that was really interesting.
For boy love, yeah.
Yeah. So I had no problems with that whatsoever. Orange, I felt was a little bit more direct.
Yes.
Than I was comfortable with.
And it's more for me, it's more outside the scope thing. Things would be like presented, oh, this is for Pride Month. You gotta check this out. Like more of the advertising sense of it. Or even like how shows are advertised, like, oh, there's a crazy gay episode of Euphoria, things like that. Oh, this character turns out to be gay. That's what I'm trying to get at, because there's a weird dismissive way of advertising nowadays.
Yeah,
at least for gay. Yeah.
No, Dragon Maid doesn't
far from.
No, it's very. I wouldn't say that Dragon Maid is for all ages, because
it's 110% for adults. I know that.
Well, there's jokes in there that are borderline. It's like, whoa, okay.
They went there, yeah.
Yeah, they went there. And I wasn't, the first time I watched it, I didn't notice that. The show's so cute and endearing.
Yeah.
That I didn't really get I wasn't really paying attention to some of the jokes.
Yeah.
But then you told me some stuff, and the second viewing, the second viewing, I was like, oh.
There's stuff that could be banned. Let's just put it that way.
I was like, oh wow.
In a certain recurring gag, Tohru's tail.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not gonna go there.
No. It's just we'll mention, just get out of the way.
But yeah, that's that. If you guys are gonna watch that, know that there are some jokes. I know that the show got some heat about the how do I put this without sounding?
I know.
Yeah,
how to defend it too.
Yeah, there was a little bit of like questioning about the breast sizes of the female dragon characters.
Yes.
And how it comes across.
But the show's kind of meta with that too, and the manga as well, because it's like one of those things where the dragons themselves are very naive of this world, and starting with Tohru, because Tohru is ultimately the outsider.
Well, to them, it's like to Tohru, it's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, to Tohru, it's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
I think it's part of their superiority.
That
in a way, we're like, hey, we're dragons,
so. and their practicality too. Like Ilulu, for example, she mentions that it feels fire in her belly, kind of thing, for her breasts. So.
Well, I think it's a little bit of like, especially for Kobayashi.
Yeah.
It's kind of a running gag. We're like, hey, we're dragons.
Yeah.
So of course, everything on us is bigger because we're dragons.
And dare I say, also alludes to the desires. Let's put it that way, for Kobayashi. And this is what I'm trying to get at ultimately with the gay love aspect of it. These are natural. These are like viewpoints.
It's very like. It's like you said. It's like, this is what we are, but this is not what we are.
Yeah, and it's
a very traditional, almost. It's almost even less aggressive than other romance stories.
Like, not too over the top.
No, like this is like it's a comfy anime.
Yeah, and it's more a sense with the characters. Like with Tohru, she immediately loves Kobayashi, especially what Kobayashi did for her in her drunken strength of things. Kobayashi got the sword out of her belly.
Kobayashi saved her life.
Yes.
Accepted her for who she was.
Yeah, right off the bat.
And gave her a place to live.
Right off the bat.
And gave her a purpose in life.
Yeah.
And so, Kobayashi gave her the opportunity to be something new in this world, really without any exchange.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no like, oh, you're gonna, like, she has to be the maid, but I mean, she's an adult, so she's got to take care of herself anyway.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a tradition kind of thing. Yeah, a tradition thing that fits into Kobayashi's fetish.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. But she gives her all of this really without any kind of like. There's no like she's not Kobayashi really isn't asking for anything. Like here's a dragon. A dragon usually has like hoarded gold,
Yeah.
all these powers. Because if somebody in Kobayashi's, in Tohru's world would have said, "Oh, you're a dragon. Can you smite my enemies? Can
Battle
you,
the gods.
yeah, can you give me all your gold?"
Yeah.
And Kobayashi's just like, "Oh, you want to live with me? Be my
Yeah.
maid."
Yeah.
So in Tohru,
that's my desire, my lone desire.
yeah, in Tohru's eyes, it's kind of like asking the genie for a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up because that's like a reoccurring like question mark throughout the series, even season 2, probably for season 3 and 4 for all I know, if they go that far. That ultimately, am I worthy of this type of affection, love, and care?
Oh yeah,
for both sides, and that's a fascinating. Even for regular romances, that's a rarity. The longevity of love. Where will I go from here on out?
well, there's such a lack of selfishness.
Yeah.
There's so much selflessness. And then there's such a, like you said, there's a question, like these characters are asking themselves, do I deserve this?
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, you
do. But they have to figure it out.
They have to. Well, because they're battling, not only are they battling like, tradition, but I don't want to say tradition, but they're battling their own insecurities.
Society as well.
Yeah.
And your role in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, with the gay themes, that definitely is definitely a, what's that word? I'm kind of like a seamless, like, I get it. And that's why I'm also going back to the girl love aspect. This show, honestly, for me, opened that viewpoint for me. Because like you mentioned, like there have been many shows, many episodes, many works of literature that have gay love. And every Pride Month, you get to read them all, see a new thing or two. This one does it in a way where I just didn't think twice about it. And through my early understandings of great gay culture and gay living, from seeing episodes of like The Simpsons and like here and there stuff, yeah, it's always been around. And this is like kind of like a liberating aspect of it. This show is a case study for it.
Well, I think seeing it in such a traditional like norm, like it's so normal.
Yeah,
it's just that's
where it brings it
Kobayashi's
down.
Dragon Maid. It's so normal because it's like here's two people, they meet, they get an apartment together.
Yes,
they
make a family.
They make a family. They have friends, and this is their circle of friends.
Yeah.
And it's very accepting. They're very Kobayashi is very accepting of all of them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh, this is your friend. I'm gonna treat this is somebody from your world. I'm gonna treat them nice.
Yeah.
And even when Tohru doesn't want her to,
yeah,
she's like, well,
well, Tohru's tad jelly, but also has history with these people too, which is fascinating.
She does,
yeah.
and I like how they all start out wanting to fight her. But you realize that they're kind of like the broken people from their world.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And their first one they technically taken in, mind you, this is like the second or third episode, is Kanna.
Kanna, yeah.
Kanna,
she shows up, yeah.
She's technically the daughter. Initially, when you look at her, I liked Kobayashi's original like description of her. Oh, she's like a goth lolly with tribal overtones. That was a funny line.
Which is an exact description of her character.
No, quite the opposite.
Yeah,
kind of like just a kid. She's just a normal kid.
I mean, she is a kid.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's like almost like a production. Like if the production, if the production designer
meta.
Yeah, if the production designer wrote like a description of what the character had to look like, that's exactly what it is.
It is. It's wonderful. Kind of ultimately day one, she wants that attention. She's a kid, and they're like, okay, how do we arrange this? And Tohru, of course, being she's of course like, oh, give me the attention. I'm the baby, kind of thing. And that open love kind of is contagious. And little strides, Kobayashi's putting those walls, but breaking those walls.
Yeah,
and kind of is the case study because kind of is naturally her gifted daughter. So.
Yeah, she takes that daughter role. That daughter role becomes more and more at first you see Kanna almost as like, well, you see all of them as kind of like Tohru's rivals.
Yes, yes, yes.
Except for Fanfear and
Fafnir is technically an equal.
yeah, Fanfear and who's the other one?
For the dragon.
Yeah.
Oh.
Katsukuwatsu.
Oh, Lucoa. But Lucoa's okay, good call. She's not technically a rival.
No, neither of them are rivals. They're kind of like
overseers.
Like you said,
overseers.
Not overseers, but kind of like
or the faction spectator, technically.
Yeah, they're kind of like her contemporary. They're like like her equals.
Yeah, equals ultimately.
There are people who are on the same level and like
yeah.
I do love that when every time she reaches out to Fanfear to get advice, he's like, kill them all.
Yeah, Fanfear is definitely more of the destructive side. And okay, another wonderful aspect of the show, wonderful, is that it does a 180 almost every episode with the dragon mythos. All the dragons are represented by different cultures and factions. And so Tohru starting off with, mind you, she's becoming a maid. She's being in servitude for Kobayashi from day one. She's a chaos dragon. She wants destruction.
Yeah.
And part of the ideology of that comes in full sway later on. You have to see it in strides. Then, with the mythos as well, that builds and builds and builds. And for each episode, understanding more of the characters and the dragons, you get to understand them more.
Yeah.
And this is like easier course of understanding mythology than any college course, I would argue.
I like the way they adapt to human life.
Yes.
And the different relationships that they have.
And how it makes sense. That's the eerie part, like what we were just mentioning Fafnir. Fafnir, I guess, is chaos or some type of spectator. He's a very unique dragon. He pretty much stayed awake for 1,000 years guarding his gold. He's a gold hoarder. What would you think he would be like in human form? I ask you, listener.
I know, right?
He's an otaku, a shonen who wants to carry his weeb shit and take care of it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it makes sense. It makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a hoarder.
Yeah.
He's a hoarder, and
he plays video games all night. And mind you, he stays awake at night watching his gold.
Yeah, they start living together.
Or he finally, or one of Kobayashi's friends, Takia, he decides to take Fafnir
her coworker. Yeah, he takes Fafnir in, and their relationship is very strange.
A lot of people,
but very considerate of each other.
Extremely, and a lot of people have had that angle with the gay love. Yeah, that definitely could be that route.
I don't, and it's like with the main show, with the like with Kobayashi, the main relationship with Kobayashi and Tohru, it's kind of like there, but then it doesn't. It matters in the sense that it's important to tell these kinds of narratives. But at the same time, it's not what the show is about.
You say the key word, and it's the extreme nature of the show, or the extreme case study of the show. Subdued. This is life.
Yeah.
This is what people do this every day.
It's a very slice of life show in a sense that
more so than any other,
which is very strange
for a fanatical show.
Well, considering the fact that this is like about dragons from another world
disguised as humans.
Yeah, and then Ashota is like summoning demons so that he could fight them and control them.
That's later on. Yes.
Yeah, and so. And it's like, what is happening here?
But going back to Fafnir and Takia, Takia is like a closeted weeb as well, similar to Kobayashi. And that's how him and Kobayashi are the only friends there.
Their love of maid culture. Yeah.
And then Tohru, of course, jealous of anyone, especially him. But later on, she eases in with him. But with him, with Takia, he takes Fafnir in. It ultimately reminds me of Welcome to the NHK, one of my all-time favorite animes.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
The main character, Sato, from that anime, becomes friends with his former classmate. And they're pretty much weebing it out. They're trying to make a Mo game. and that's like a good half of the anime, and they kind of have that chemistry, just roommates, just living together and playing video games all night.
Two chill dudes.
Yeah, and the little instances in there while you watch the show and read the manga, it's funny, really genuine, funny stuff. Because Fafnir is that much hardcore of a gamer.
Oh yeah, he is. Well, I think Fafnir is just has that personality. Yeah,
and he's the only one I would argue doesn't have like he doesn't have the total arc per se, but he's ultimately serves his purpose in his instances.
I think he has his arc in a way.
Little instances.
But I think that his arc is, like you said, subdued.
Yeah.
Because I think he comes from like the most extreme to like, okay, I'll tolerate this.
And I'll let it pass.
Because he's not even like, there's Kobayashi and Tohru are the A story.
Yeah.
But then you have the B, C, D,
E, F, G,
and then,
H, I, J, K.
Fanfear's story is kind of like the E story.
Yeah, it's so layered.
It had to be kind of like there's not much that you could do there.
Yeah.
But I think they do enough where it stays relevant and it stays funny throughout the entire show.
No, and also how it's set up too. And this is also kind of like the aspect going back to the original episodes, the first 3 or 4. Kobayashi is finally introduced to the dragon world. Mm-hmm. You would think like, okay, maybe Tohru decides to turn into a dragon and makes her fly around the world, which she does, but she doesn't go to her world. She pretty much takes the dragons that decided to stay in our world and introduces them to Kobayashi in the most formal way possible, a party.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Fafnir comes in and he's pretty much the weep, and he's playing video games the whole time. Then they also meet.
He's like, what is this?
Yeah. They also meet one of their kindreds, and Edwin mentioned her earlier, Lucoa, quasi Kyoto. If I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, she was a goddess.
Yeah, goddess, and definitely of the Aztec Mayan tradition.
Yeah.
That's why I was trying to get it earlier with the factions. Also culture based. I'm not too sure of Fafnir's background, but Kanna's definitely Japanese influenced. Reminds me a lot of Faulkner from Neverending Story.
Okay, I can see that.
Her dragon form.
Mm-hmm.
Tohru's European to the T, like French, European dragon. Think of that mythos.
Well,
Celtic.
her name is essentially dragon.
That as well. And then Lucoa. This is definitely the most controversial character in the show.
Oh yeah, because the bra size.
Yeah, that, and she's fascinating. She serves her purpose, but it's also the taboo nature of the show as well.
Oh, because it's Shota.
Yeah,
and he's a middle schooler.
Yeah, but in a little quick recap of Lucoa, she's summoned as a familiar, and when you're summoned as a familiar, you have a master, and that happens to be a little boy named Shota, who is an inspired mage.
Yeah.
Mind you, this is real world stuff, but there's no magic at play.
Well, because his father, they actually know about the other world.
Yes.
And so they know about magic and dragons and everything.
And the father happened to be the boss of Kobayashi.
Kobayashi's boss,
Yep.
running the company, which is kind of like weird. Especially that he knows Tohru's dad.
Yep.
That was even weirder.
Yep.
But it kind of makes sense in a way.
It connects the dots a little bit.
Yeah.
I would argue.
Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, the dragonness is kind of like a metaphor.
No, it's more about them more adjusting to the human form.
Yeah.
And roles in society. And that's why when we saying all the subdued aspect, it's more of the personalities and the love affections and stuff.
Well, it's about... Well, it's kind of a metaphor for the girl love that we were talking about.
Yes, that's what I get it.
Because a lot of times it comes down to the question of, will this relationship work?
Yeah.
And as far as like the questions that come in for them being dragons, it's like, will it work? Will we be accepted? Will our parents accept us?
Yeah.
Will all of these questions that come into play? I mean, with the dragons, they play in the part that dragons are long-lived.
Well,
and that the humans are their enemies.
Yeah. And Tohru's definitely going to outlive Kobayashi. Those choices.
Yeah.
And the keyword family, the real families are definitely a question mark.
Yeah.
And also kind of like their status. Tohru with Chaos And her rival, or another dragon that's introduced later,
Elma. Which is your favorite, you said?
My favorite dragon in the bunch. The most basic office worker ever.
The foodie of the show.
The foodie of the show. That's all she does.
Because modern anime has to have
food galore. Food love.
Yes.
And she's the one, but she's also an interesting character because once you watch later on, she definitely has a kinship, or at least given Tohru that kinship.
Well, once again, because the show, this is a pattern with the show where every time they'll introduce a dragon, and the dragon is part of a faction that is opposed to Tohru.
Yeah, and Kobayashi too. Yeah,
yeah. Well, Kobayashi doesn't
get it. Yeah,
she doesn't get it. She just accepts them all for who they are.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a friend of Tohru's?
Yes, yeah. You know, especially Lucoa. Oh, you're cool.
You're a friend of Tohru's. It's like, it's just like that sense of dread.
Yeah.
But also that sense of like acceptance.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Because the Tohru's definitely that case study.
Yeah, kind of like, oh my God, what are these dragons going to do now?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of like, it's like Tohru's aunt. She's like Tohru's aunt.
Yeah. And they're all getting used to Tohru in her new form.
Yeah.
In her new role. And the same thing with the other dragons, like Fafnir. Hey, you know what? I'm just going to be whatever. I don't care anymore. And Lucoa being a familiar. And Elma deciding to work as an office worker just to take an interest with Kobayashi. So.
Well, it's kind of like, here's your rival, but Kobayashi's not going to see it that way.
No.
Kobayashi's going to be like, well, she's kind of like more like a sister to you. and Tohru's like, no, I hate her.
You guys are cool.
Yeah. And the battles, we need to talk about the battles for a second, because the battles in this show are pretty epic. For it being like such a subdued kind of like slice of life anime.
In season 2, the battle between Elma and Kobayashi was nominated for best fight. I voted for best fight because.
Oh, you mean between her and Tohru?
Yeah. Over Tohru. And the art direction, fun fact, is from one of my new favorite discoveries, Naoko Yamada. She also did the direction, or the whole thing for Heike Story. And even though that's a different show, she's done the battle stuff for that. And love Chinubio and Other Delusions. Another show similar with like the subdued slice of life elements, but epic fights thrown at you. And they're better than most anime you ever see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even arguably better than Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer. Things like that.
Yeah, the fight scenes in this thing are pretty insane. They're pretty intense.
And it's detailed.
There's a lot of detail. Yeah. And they like really like it's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like they kind of come out of nowhere, and they kind of like, you're kind of like, oh. Well, you kind of have like that jaw dropping, like, what?
What am I watching kind of vibe too.
Kind of like the same, but you kind of feel, and I think it helps to give Kobayashi and the viewer a sense of perspective.
Yeah.
It's like, here they are just walking around like people, but at the same time, they are capable of some serious destruction.
Right, and how powerful they are. Even Kanna kind of has a test of wills because they need practice. Dragons need practice. And so her and Tohru have a nice little sparring part where they almost destroy the world, no biggie.
It's like,
And Kanna's that powerful too.
Yeah, and then Kobayashi's just like, which kind of like, you understand her trepidation every time they introduce a new dragon.
Yeah.
But then she's just, she just accepts them the same way she accepted Tohru.
Which is nice.
And they just become just like, okay, they're just another member of the family.
Yeah. And she welcomes them open arms.
Yeah.
And it's part of her passive nature.
Which makes Tohru kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, this is who Kobayashi is, but
it was part of the setup too. Is you just don't know the history, you don't know the lore, you don't know the mythos with these factions and these dragons.
Tohru wants to be the center of attention.
And she wants to move on, and ultimately too.
Well, Tohru. Tohru's going for the prize, man. Yeah. She's going for the ring.
That too.
And that's Tohru's end goal.
Yeah.
Kobayashi is like, what? Who even likes me?
Yeah, I know. Is she worthy?
Yeah.
But
She's like, what?
Yeah.
Somebody likes me? What?
Yep.
Yeah.
But she's just not used to it. And
Well,
she-
they're not on the same page.
Yeah.
And you can see, especially in the second season, you can see a lot of growth on Tohru's part.
Yes.
Yeah.
And mind you, like we do our end of the year reviews, and end of 2021 for Kobayashi's season 2, Edwin voted Tohru as his favorite main character.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that keyword. She had a lot of growth in season 2. Yes, very much so.
Yeah. She for me, like, between seeing her, like watching her journey, like they hint at it in season 1.
Yeah.
When they talk about, like, when she encounters she encounters a bandit. She tries to find a home that's away from humans, and she finds this kind of like abandoned, torn down castle. She's talking to Kobayashi about, because Kobayashi is asking her if she ever interacted with any other humans.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, there was this one. And
it's a small instance.
Yeah, it's a small instance, but it kind of like
becomes a recurring theme for the show.
Well, it kind of gives you a glimpse into like Tohru's, because Tohru essentially asked the human, well, what are you going to do? And she's like, well, I'm going to go, I'd like to be somebody's maid. And Tohru's like, you would enter into servitude?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, it would be my choice.
Yes.
She was like, I would have because she asked Tohru about all the freedom that Tohru has. And Tohru was like, what? What freedom?
Yeah.
I don't really. She's like, well, don't you get to choose what you want to do?
Yeah.
And Tohru's like, I guess.
Yeah.
And so the human is like, well, I would choose to be this because it would provide me with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so Tohru really, that's where I think that's the moment that sets Tohru on her journey
of discovery.
Of like figuring out who she is and what she wants to be. And that sets her on the path of trying to destroy these two factions because she doesn't want to be part of either faction.
Yeah, the Harmony faction being the other one.
Yeah, she doesn't want to fight. She doesn't want to fight. She doesn't want to choose either one of these sides. And so she goes off on her own. And that's when she spends time with Elma. But it's about her figuring out that, no, I don't want to be either one of these things.
Yeah.
I want,
Even though I'm chaos, I'm not exactly chaos. It's more of the ideology.
Well, it's like I didn't get the choice whether I wanted to be chaos or not. Yeah. Especially with her dad being.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, the head of the chaos faction.
Her dad is the of Dragon Demise. That's a key aspect of the show, like we mentioned earlier, with family. Even Tohru's linear family, even Kobayashi's linear family, there's tension.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kobayashi doesn't really have much to do with. She's kind of like lived on her own.
But she's distanced herself to our area. I would say that she hasn't made an attempt to reconcile. Could be part of the gay love aspect of it, like they don't accept me for who I am. Could be. It could be.
I think it's more of like.
Because I can see like the alliterations between Tohru's dad and Kobayashi's real dad, which we never see.
Well, I think it has more to do with Kobayashi not being comfortable expressing herself.
That's a theme as well, yes.
Yeah, I think expressing that, I think that we might see like her taking Tohru to meet her family in a later season.
Yeah.
I think that would be like a big deal.
Yes.
That might almost be like a show ender.
Yeah.
Because it would show a lot of growth on Kobayashi's side.
Yes.
Where it's like, okay, I've accepted you as my mate in life, and so now I want you to meet my family.
Yep.
Yeah, so that would be like a big deal for Kobayashi. So I would see that almost as like an endpoint to the show. Mm-hmm. Because at that point there would be no walls left in Kobayashi's heart.
And those are the dragons. Those are the elements at play, especially with Tohru, because Tohru was like, I want you for myself.
Yeah. Well, she wants the attention.
Yeah.
She wants to be the most special dragon in Kobayashi's life, and
Yeah.
she is.
Yep.
Let's not. Yeah.
Well, it's also like we said, we're Kobayashi. Audiences like Kobayashi. That's why I have a weird kinship with Kobayashi, because I have reservations similar to Kobayashi, especially with love.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't all of us?
No, we do. Like, to the extreme notion of, and Kobayashi, like we mentioned earlier, is that person, is that person of this world. And she's just working to live, and that's it. And you relate to that tremendously because you feel like you're trapped.
Well, Kobayashi's like the ultimate straight man.
Yeah.
Not.
Well, ironically.
I mean, in a comedic sense.
That and
where, like, if you're gonna tell a joke, you need a straight man.
Yes.
Yeah, not.
Abbott and Costello.
Yeah,
you name it.
So the character that doesn't get it or is like
moving along the joke.
Yes.
Whereas the Joker is going all over the place.
Yes, that's the sense that I meant that term in.
Yeah.
I felt I needed to clarify. It
was
that.
Good irony play.
It was. So she's pretty much that. She's she's our viewpoint character, but she's also like. They had to make her. It works well because she is so normal.
Yeah,
and she is so like.
And what if she actually had a family? And like I mentioned earlier, with Elements of Desire, has Kobayashi ever wanted that? Even she doesn't know that, and it's so relatable because we always have that question: like, am I worthy for a family, or can I handle a family? Am I cool with a family? Will I get bored with a family? Things like that.
Yeah,
human, basic, emotional, thoughts.
Yeah. And she gets her answers.
Yeah.
She gets her answers.
Steady by steady. And with these dragons coming into her life, more like even the dragons are making friends themselves. Like Kanna has a, cute little friend. Two friends eventually.
There are moments where I get kind of uncomfortable with the direction of that.
Okay. Well, let me hear that side of it.
Well, I think it's more like I had to think about it. I'm like, wait, isn't Kanna's a child, but isn't she like an older dragon? I'm not sure. Well, because it's kind of like an exploration of girl love.
The extremes, but also I mentioned earlier with the taboo.
Well, the jokes. I think the jokes are meant to be kind of like a little bit more. How do I put this? The jokes, the moments between them are played with a little bit. They're a little bit more. They're not as subtle as the relationship between Kobayashi and Tohru.
Yes, then that's the real love, and that's where we're, like you mentioned, point A, or the A story. Kanna's C or D, but there's a heavy focus with Kanna, I would argue.
Yeah, I agree.
And the thing with that is, like, Rika, we were mentioning this friendship with her and Rika, ultimately jokes.
Yeah.
Ultimately, because I don't even consider it more girl love. I consider it more like she's so cute. Like, she's kawaii.
That's what I thought toward the beginning.
Oh, okay. So you second viewing is different. I have consistent. Yeah. For me, it's Lucoa that changed perspective for me. So
for me, my view of Rika and Kanna's relationship, this time it changed.
Okay.
I mean, they were kind of rivals toward the beginning, but then slowly I felt that Rika. Is it Rika?
Or Riko.
Riko, yeah. I felt that Riko's relationship to Kanna changed, where it went from being cute to like she's almost like a child version of Tohru, where she wants Kanna's attention.
Yeah.
And it's less subtle. And there was a moment where it was they were all at a festival. Riko's her blushing, the level of blushing, for me transitioned it from like Kanna's so cute to essentially she's in love with Kanna. Like this is a relationship now. Yeah, this is almost like a blossoming, like relationship for them that has a little bit. It goes a little bit more. It's a little bit more serious than this is just. She's just so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And it's ultimately me with Lucoa and Shota because that's tough.
Yeah, there are moments there too.
But both, for me, both are jokes at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, a lot of that, a lot of it is played for jokes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
in the basis form, yes.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, like I said, it's not as subtle
Yeah.
as Kobayashi and Tohru's relationship. A lot more of it is played for laughs.
Yeah.
They're kind of like the comic relief
Yes.
aspect of the show. But I think that their relationships are also very endearing.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think that
they find a way, especially with Lucoa's, because that one's like its own thing. But there are episodes in the second season where it explores that. It actually does. It's pretty honest about it.
Yeah.
Because Shota's like, he's like, I can't do this. But Shota has this weird, embarrassing aspect that it is a familiar, and he's young, but he's growing in puberty essentially. So
yeah. He's trying to be an adult, but he's wholly not ready for the level.
No, because he wants to be an all-powerful mage, and this is where he has to go to.
She is like essentially a sex pot goddess.
A succubus.
Yeah, a sex pot succubus, and he is just not ready for that.
No.
I mean,
far from it.
I mean, I get it, I understand it, and he's like, I'm not ready for this. I can't handle this. And what kid could?
No. That's the aspect where it's interesting, but it's also like, oh, I get it.
Well, she's just teasing him.
Ultimately.
It's like there's no. This isn't like the Kanna and Riko.
Yeah.
Where that might be a blossoming.
It's flip flop. Yeah, that one's flip flop too. Yeah.
That one might be a blossoming relationship.
Yeah.
With this one, it's purely like this makes Shota uncomfortable. I'm gonna tease him mercilessly, and but they have affection for each other.
They find a way. Oh, let me put that. And they're still trying to find.
Yeah, she's like kind of like a surrogate. Like you never see Shota's mom.
No, of all things, and the father is the boss. Yeah,
and so she's kind of like his caregiver.
Yeah,
kind of
overseer, and even the father knows about it.
Kind of like his guardian.
Even the father knows about it too. So
kind of like his crazy wacky. She's kind of like Tohru's crazy wacky aunt.
Yeah, and even how the show is set up, how Lucoa casually checks in with Kobayashi. She's like a chatty chat, like a Kathy next door. Like, oh, I want to talk to you my stories.
Like,
give me some coffee. I'll talk about the
They'll gossip a little bit. Yeah. She always brings over pastries.
She has that look.
Yeah.
And I always love how she opens one eye to the other. Eye wisdom. Her dragon fashion is technically almost like a goddess.
I mean, the person that she reminds me most of is, if you remember, the person that Lucoa most reminds me of is the mom in Toradora.
Yeah. Good call.
Like they're cut from the same cloth.
They're wise. They're bimbos, like on the surface, but they have very wise and sound advice. They're they're almost like naive of their wisdom and wit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how they roll with things, how they chill out the vibe. Yeah, every time you see Lucoa, it's pretty much that. To be honest, not this like buxom succubus. It's quite the opposite.
No, you see her as like this really chill like aunt.
Yeah. And in that relationship as well, we haven't even gotten to the later addition to the family, which is also kind of his own controversy with Ilulu. Kobayashi pretty much like takes her in like Kanna, and it's the same rehash. And even Lulu's background is similar to Tohru because she wanted to be a child, but she can't. Yeah. She's the one dragon that's definitely torn with being a human and being a dragon. Only one I can think of.
It becomes it's a bigger struggle for her than the other ones.
Yeah, because like literally she wants to be young, but she's technically a teenager.
Yeah. Well, I think that she, from her memories, from what I remember correctly, like her childhood was kind of like torn away.
Gone.
Yeah, I could understand her wanting to have a childhood, especially, and then her conflict toward humans is because these were the kids that she played with.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she's told she can't play with them anymore because humans are killing dragons.
Yeah.
And so it becomes kind of like this thing of like, she doesn't want to trust humans, but at the same time, she kind of does.
Yeah.
Because it's like she kind of wants those friends. She had human friends. She kind of wants that back. She's been told that she can't have it. And here is a world where they're able to explore what they want
Yeah.
in their lives.
Yeah.
They get the freedom to like, okay, you're here now.
Yeah.
You're not dealing with the same problems that you were dealing at home.
Yeah.
Now you're open to explore who it is you want to be and what it is you want to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a struggle. I mean, there's a struggle for all of them. More so with her, I think, than any of the other characters. But anime does this all the time.
Yeah.
Where you have your established characters who have kind of resolved what's going on with them. So they introduce somebody who
just came into the foil. And I was showing this the Edwin earlier because the manga is very fascinating because how it's set up similar to Komi Can't Communicate, Horimiya, you name it, kind of like these instances of adventures molded into one. Ilulu is actually introduced in the third volume, but
which is really surprising.
Yeah, technically it's first season territory, but she's introduced in the second season for plots and purposes. And also the manga series has 2 spin-off series. There's one with Kanna and one with Alma. So there's definitely more to branch off with. So all these adventures interceding with each other. So it's quite fascinating.
It would be hard. I think that leaving her to the second season, I think, was kind of smart.
Especially the first episode. Like, get it out of the way.
Yeah,
like,
because...
I understand. Gotcha.
Well, because they had so much going on already.
Yeah. And also to thin out a little bit, like, put a little bit at bay with Kobayashi, because that's ultimately the focus. So that's what we want to see. We want to see the result of Kobayashi and
Tohru's relationship.
Yes. And a little bit more growth with Alma as well, because Alma needs a little room to breathe. So things like that.
Well, Elma's like kind of almost like the E story.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of like relegated to being like the foodie.
In office worker, and the only one that's kind of solo, and she likes it.
Well, I love that in the second season, they explain why she's like that.
Ultimately, because she had prior history with Tohru. It's almost like a fable how they set it up, because she's like almost like a Mesopotamian type of god, Middle Eastern.
Yeah, she was kind of like a water.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like a water god. She was worshipped kind of like as a water god.
Yeah.
And so they always brought her like tributes of food and stuff.
Yes.
And she's like, I love the human food.
Yeah.
And so like when Tohru kind of messes that up for her, she's like, you messed this up for me.
Yeah.
And she's like, whatever.
Yeah, Tohru does like self-righteousness aspect. Because she's being treated like a goddess, essentially.
Yeah, and Tohru hates that.
Yeah.
And so
thus the chaos.
Yeah. So then she follows her along, and they're going from place to place. And, Elma's like, all Elma really cares about is like the humans giving her the food
and attention.
But they keep forming these religions around her, and it pisses Tohru off to no end.
Yeah.
And she's like, you got to stop doing this.
Yeah.
But I love how Elma's single-mindedness about the food leads to so many problems.
Yeah.
And that becomes a thing that she focuses on here in the human world.
Yes. It's almost like that's that story. But then you see Elma like eating all the rare candies and Tohru being an actual maid.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. This is a wonderful contrast. Because the whole episode is about that. You see Elma and Tohru kind of bickering, kind of like, best friends fighting each other. But they're like, no, we're not friends at all. No, you are.
It's kind of like this is Tohru's sister.
Yeah. Kindred. I would dare say her first crush. Like both of her first crushes.
Well, like Kanna is like almost like her surrogate daughter.
Yeah.
But I think that, and then Fanfear is like her uncle.
Yeah. Good call. And
Lucoa is like the aunt. But I think Elma fits the spot of the sister.
Good call. I didn't think of it that way. At least with the outer.
Especially with the because I think out of all of them, she has the truest rivalry.
That and
with Tohru.
They also have like the same normalcy in a weird way.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I do like that. I do like in the second season where they're doing she goes the neighborhood watch.
Yeah.
And she sees how Tohru, who she has this rivalry with, and disdain for like her lack of like, because Elma's from the Harmony faction.
Yes.
And so she sees Tohru as always as a chaos
No
dragon.
order.
Yeah.
Destroy all.
And she sees her doing this, and she's like, "You're defending and helping people? What?"
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
And then when Kobayashi sees Tohru at her part-time job, it's kind of like, wow.
Yeah.
She's really impressed with, like, wow. And the season kind of plays around with that a lot.
In
Yeah.
the second season especially, it's more like character arc friendly, I argue. Like back to back, there'll be kind of a focus on Kanna, focus on Elma, focus on Lucoa. Fafnir kind of like has instances.
Yeah.
And Tohru, of course, beginning and end. And Lulu, I would say, has maybe one standout episode.
Yeah.
That's it. But ultimately, you get that.
Yeah.
You brought up a great episode example where Tohru's on Neighborhood Watch. She also does Maid Cafe. There's episodes where very normal of this world. One of my favorites actually is Kanna's when she goes to New York. You know, because she got in a fight with Kobayashi. It feels like a whole episode's worth, but it's barely half. When rewatching, I'm like, oh my god, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
The attention to detail with that kind of story. And how Kanna grows and understands that, yeah, Kobayashi's my mom. I shouldn't be mad at my mom all the time.
Yeah.
And then they do a 180 back in Japan where Kanna just hanging out with Kobayashi. Mind you, this dragon can travel all the way to New York and back like it's nothing. But she just wants to be home with her mom.
But one of the cool things about that episode that you see later on is that Tohru was always in the background.
That's one of the funniest things in the whole show. Is genius.
Yeah, Tohru.
Genius.
Not only does it speak to like, not only is it hilarious.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to Toru's growth in that I'm not letting my daughter run away without like some kind of supervision.
And ultimately the mother.
But she also gives her that room to kind of like
older sister too. Yeah.
Well, not. She gives her. She's like, okay, my child is pissed. Yeah. She just ran away from home, and
she calls Kobayashi buttface. She does. It's cute.
She runs away from home, but at the same time, it's like I'm gonna give her this room to be mad.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna watch over her, but I'm also gonna give her this room to grow.
Yeah.
Where somebody else might have said, no, you can't do this, or you can't do that. But it shows how Tohru is like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I've been through this. I've learned. I've experienced. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the concluding aspect for each season. First season's like Kobayashi becoming more in terms adapting with the family idea. And then for the second season, become more with Tohru. Yeah. It should have been Miss Tohru's Dragon Adventure or something like that.
Yeah.
Different title.
Been, yeah.
But and you mentioned how she grows for that season. Excellently placed, because in the final two episodes, Tohru comes to terms with her stance in this world. Takes a while, but we figure it out along the way.
Yeah. And that when they have that the cherry blossom picnic.
A total like let's just have fun, almost a beach episode.
Almost, but the wedding dresses. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
That she had the wedding dresses there.
Yeah.
And Kobayashi's like, nope. And she starts running, and then Toru's running after her. That was a great way to end
almost
it.
Like a slapstick energy. Like at the end of the day, we're just having fun.
Like we're like, yeah, we've got a little serious along the way, but we are still a comedy.
Because this show gives you those questions. And it could be any orientation whatsoever. This show provides with that, not because of the orientation itself, but more of the source material. Like, this is these characters figuring out stuff.
Yeah, it's about being, it's about being a human.
Yeah, at the end, I agree.
It's about being a human. It's about being an adult. It's about figuring out who you are, what kind of relationships you want to have, and it's about the relationships around you, and it's about the families that you build along the way. And and Kobayashi gains a lot of things that I think she was lacking in her life, and Tohru goes on this journey of self-discovery, and she realizes that more than ever, Kobayashi is the person she wants to be with.
Yeah. Ultimately, and it's beautifully placed. And two more things I will definitely have to mention. Oh, well, the music. The music's tremendous. We definitely
Oh yeah,
recommend
that opening,
the art
that
direction.
yeah,
Yeah, everything through the roof with that. Like, and we mentioned with the fight scenes, the animation's through the roof there too. Oh my god.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those shows that's like oversought. The story itself and the characters overtake that, which is like what? And I'm Mr. Art Guy. That's the first thing I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and music as well.
But it's so well, the relationships and the growth, the character growth is so well handled
Yeah,
that the fight scenes and the music and the animation just feel like bonus.
yeah.
Like, hey man, not only do you get this great story about these great characters, you get great animation, you get great fight scenes, and you get great music, and it's a win-win-win.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I remember now. Well, the first thing is, what is your favorite sequence or episode?
Probably the most fun is Kanna's journey to New York.
Okay, and I was wondering about that.
I think that's the most fun.
Yeah.
Emotionally, my favorite part of the show is just the entirety of Toru's journey.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But for me,
Well, the fight scenes too.
for me, I forgot to mention this. It's definitely like my favorite thing of the season, first season, the con episode. It's my favorite con episode.
Oh yeah.
They have a tremendous. There's a whole episode too, mind you.
Yeah.
Of all the dragons going to this Comic Con.
Yeah.
Lucoa gets kicked out because she's like practically nude in cosplay, which is it's such a meta thing. It's wonderful. But the whole premise is just Kobayashi and Tohru just hanging out at a convention because of Takia is trying to sell stuff. And Favmir is trying to sell his literature, his hardcore literature.
His book of curses. His book of curses that nobody buys.
Yeah. And I had to think about that. Like, in the whole theme of that show, definitely overseas, and like second time viewing just blew my mind because, like, oh my god, because I didn't go to cons until much later in life. And Edwin, of course, right here, sitting across from me, took me for my first con. I still thank him to this day. And yeah, you relate to these feelings, and that was a case study when I had to really think about that. Did I have the same experience? I did, because the energy of people in a con is definitely where you become yourself in a weird way.
It's and Tohru comments on this.
Yes.
She comments on this because she sees people she can recognize people from the other world.
Which is great.
And they're there because they don't have to wear a costume.
Yes.
They don't have to pretend to be anybody else.
A theme.
And I think one of the things that I always found at conventions is that people are there to enjoy their nerddom, whatever it may be.
Bar,
yeah. It's a matter of, and this is an important thing, and I think this is one of the things that the show talks about that we didn't talk about. It's about acceptance.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's about acceptance. It's about accepting who you are, but it's also other people accepting you because they get it.
Yeah.
They get it.
Yeah.
They get it. You like this? Oh, cool. I like this too.
Yeah.
And that's what conventions are about.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this show is about. They get it. It's about acceptance.
Yeah. And also, we would like to dedicate this episode to the Kyoto animation. And of course, if you're an anime fan, or if you're an anime fan, you know the tragic news a couple years ago of the Kyoto animation arson attack in Japan. Dragon Maid was one of their later productions, if not their last production before that fire. And the key director, his name is Yashiro Takimoto. He died in that arson.
He passed away in the fire, yeah.
Sadly. And the other members, too, they were from Violet Evergarden to another one is Futoshi Nishiya. He was also a designer of Silent Voice and Liz and the Bluebird. We also got Junji Uda. He is also key animator for Ichiju for My Ordinary Life. These are people that go they've created pretty much all your favorite animes and did key works for like K-On! And stuff like that. And, doing this podcast, learning more and more of the creators, the geeks like us, the people that are day one with their love and obsession with anime and animation in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we definitely have to honor these type of people. And in the second season, they do a nice little tribute to Yashiro Takimoto. They actually, whenever in the opening, when you see Tohru and Kobayashi falling down or twirling in the air, they highlight his name.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's a gleaming light. There's a cross right there. It's beautiful. That's a wonderful tribute. So every time you see that animation, think of him. So he was pretty much the reason why the show is the way it is for the first season, at least, which is astounding because you rarely get this type of show where the craziness, the chaoticness of life in general, and out of world stuff and dragon lore condensed into this enduring love story.
The subtle balance.
Yeah. Of a girl love story too. And we can't shy away with that kind of stuff.
No.
No.
And I hope you enjoyed our discussion of Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 950 Club. Today, we'll be continuing our Dragon special that we started last week with Kobayashi's Dragon Maid.
Yes. Kobayashi's Dragon Maid essentially is one of the best comedies in anime today. For part 2, for our Dragon special, not only is it themed with dragons, that's part of the joke, honestly, but this is quite a unique comedy.
And as Jack said, this is a very different kind of comedy. It's actually a fantasy comedy called Dragon Goes Househunting.
Yeah, and fantasy is a key word too, because you're literally in a fantasy world. To think of like a typical sitcom that randomly is with Merlin and stuff like that.
Yeah, it takes these modern day situations and throws them into a fantasy setting with very hilarious effects.
Yeah, this is part of the lore with the show as well, because best way to describe it, comedy-wise, parody. Dare I say parody?
I can see that because I think they're making fun of like
everything.
Yeah,
I would argue everything, not just fantasy stuff, but pretty much everything.
Yeah. Well, like like relationships and like getting to know people, going out into the world.
Yeah, and even
and
like
how insane it can be.
And even the anime itself, I would argue, like not too much with making fun of tropes. Like a lot of anime comedies that are self-aware nowadays, like Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. There's a lot of similar beats where Kobayashi's very meta and makes fun of the characters because you're along with the joke with the audience.
Well, you always feel their episode titles are always break the fourth wall.
Yes.
Yeah, the episode titles for Kobayashi's Dragon Maid are amazing.
Yeah,
check them when you watch the show. Pay attention to each episode title.
Yeah,
because it is hilarious.
Like how I mentioned how Kobayashi's more like a modern day classic in regards to comedy and in anime. Dragon Goes Househunting is more overseeing. It's more of a comedy, more than the anime, I would argue. In fact, I have to be honest. It reminds me of like a Adult Swim comedy.
No, Dragon Goes Househunting reminds me like of 70s sitcom.
Yeah, that too.
It's a situational sitcom, and every episode it's purely for the jokes.
Yeah.
This show exists to make you laugh.
Yeah.
There's no, unlike with Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, there's a lot more, I don't want to say heart to it, because I think that Dragon Goes Househunting has heart to it too.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit more drama in Kobayashi's Dragon Maid than there is in Dragon Goes Househunting.
Yeah, because Dragon Goes Househunting is sequence by sequence, episode by episode. You're along with the joke. And you get the joke right away kind of thing, but you laugh more and more with the same joke.
Well, I think that it has to do a lot with the main character, Letty.
Yeah.
Who is kind of like, he's the exact opposite. He plays on your expectations of what a dragon should be.
Yes.
And the first episode is all about that,
Yes.
essentially.
And that, and also kind of like the overseeing aspect of the comedy is set up like a Richard Attenborough documentary. You have this narrator enters you into this fantasy world. You see these awesome creatures. Like one of the creatures I saw was like this lava rhino.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, remember the first? That's what I mean, because it's such a gorgeous opening. You feel like you're watching a nature documentary. And the the opening lines themselves is this world of ours is filled with meandering of life.
Yep.
How do you spell it?
Menagerie
of life. And yeah, you're like, okay, these are kind of cool. Like even Dungeons and Dragons character creation, you can't even make up these fanatical creatures. Then you see Letty.
Oh, poor Letty. So essentially, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to set up the fact that this is a world full of fantasy creatures.
Yeah.
And that the apex predator among all of these fantasy creatures is supposed to be the awesome and terrifying dragon.
Yes.
But then we get Letty, who is completely and totally not terrifying at all.
Not far from it.
Yes.
And that's why it's such a fascinating first episode, because you don't see Letty right off the bat, but you know he's kind of there. And part of the lore too is that dragons are the main beast, the main thing. And same thing with Miss Kobayashi, with the factions and the lore in different cultures as well, revering the dragon. I can't help but that's one of the most unique things in our universe. I would argue the actual mythology of dragon. Each and every culture has their own edition, different timelines, separated by continents, but same lore, which is quite fascinating.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. And in here, all of the characters, and they play with that a lot in this show. They play with the fact that dragons are known to be terrifying.
Yeah.
So Letty runs into these hilarious situations where people are frightened by him right off the bat, because it's like, oh my God, dragon.
Yeah.
Automatically, it's like, oh, dragon, he's gonna steal our stuff. He's gonna kill our, he's gonna burn our fields. He's gonna destroy us. He's like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, with the setup of Letty, basically, how we're saying how he's the complete opposite of what you think of a dragon.
Yeah.
Letty.
He's a coward.
And he's small, and he's meek, and he's insecure. Every Woody Allen stereotype you could think of.
Oh no.
Edwin had to shake his head for that one.
Oh boy. Okay.
But okay, who else is neurotic? Who can you think is neurotic?
I could see him as being neurotic, but that's the thing. He's neurotic. He's afraid. I don't think that Letty is too far off from a lot of us.
Oh yeah, for sure. Or at least insecurities to the extreme. Yeah.
Well, I think, and that's the point. I think it takes like our normal like worries and concerns and kind of blows it up for comedic effect.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you get Letty I think that's why he's so afraid. That's why he's so scared. That's why he can't handle these situations. Because I think that it's like a normal person who wouldn't be as ridiculous as Letty is.
Yeah.
But, instead of like taking just a normal person, they exaggerate every aspect of that to make Letty seem like he's the most neurotic dragon that ever lived.
Yeah, I know.
And so, but I think that they don't do that, I think, because that is his character. But I think they do that to exaggerate and make every situation more funny.
Yeah.
Because the way he reacts to situations, he's like, could you please help me? And they're like, oh my God, it's a dragon. Yeah, it's like, and then, like when he meets the trolls for the first time, he's like, oh, trolls build houses?
Yeah.
And then he's like, uh-oh, what if they want, what if they kill me and want me for, my skin and stuff? And he meets a troll, and the troll's like,
there's some
or he meets a dwarf.
Yeah.
And the dwarf's like, yeah, we can build you a home. Sure. We'll just need payment. And Lady's like, well, I don't really have too much money. It's like, oh, well, we can take your horn. You don't need that, right? It's like, well, I guess. And then your tail and like your wing. He's like, wait a minute. And then your head, we can mount that on the walls of your house. And he's like, oh no.
Yeah. And it's part of the show too. The other half of the show, because like I said with the beginning episode as well, it's part of the narration because it shows all these fanatical creatures in different environments. Now, in Letty's case, he's pretty much like shooed away from his father.
He gets kicked out of his house.
Yeah, and he's not even a teenager, I would argue. He's like, yeah, go on, go forward.
So essentially, the setup is that Letty was left at home to defend the dragon eggs.
Yeah.
And bandits steal the dragon egg.
Yeah.
And so because of that, because he's unable to defend his, sibling, essentially, his father's like, get out.
Yeah.
His father throws him out into the world. And he's like, oh, no, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
He's never been away from home. And here he is. Now he has to find a house. So there goes that's where you get the premise of the show. Letty has to find a home.
Yeah.
So he has to go house hunting. And this becomes essentially a real estate show about Letty trying to find a home for himself.
Yeah. And like you mentioned with the first episode, he meets a troll. Then he goes to like a goblin like a community or something like that.
Well, they tell him. So he escapes from the dwarves who essentially want to, dissect him
for
profit. And he meets some harpies. And the harpy is like, well, you can fly, right? And he's like, well, I've never tried to.
Yeah, and that's the opposite of what Letty is. Like,
yeah.
You'd think he would be all flying dragon right off the bat.
Nope.
Nah, he walks awkwardly.
He does.
He's like he's trying to sneak more than he should walk.
Yeah, he tries to hide behind trees. And the heroes can see him. Like, we can see you. And Letty's like, no, you can't.
He doesn't even have like magic spells.
No,
Yeah.
Letty has no abilities whatsoever. Nothing.
And they literally have a joke with that where you see his stats and it's like,
yeah, his stats,
abysmal.
They are abysmal for just a normal person,
yeah.
let alone a dragon. Yeah. And so he tries to move in with these harpies, and the harpies are like, this isn't going to work out. So they sent him to meet a group of the harpies send him to a group of goblins that they know.
That's the one.
That kind of worship them. So he shows up and he's like, "Hi, I'm a dragon." And within 5 seconds of him meeting the trash tier goblins, they have hung him up and are getting ready to roast him. And they literally say, "Hey boys, dragons back on the menu."
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, if that isn't a fantasy quote, if that isn't like, yeah, that's about as fantasy as you get.
Well, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Looked like meat's back in the menu, boys.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's honestly one of my all-time favorite scenes in general.
So he has to let them know that he has been sent by the harpies, and they're like, "Oh, dude, why didn't you tell us?" So they let him go, and he tells them, "Well, I'm trying to find a home." And they're like, "Well, you're a dragon. You can't really live with us trash tier goblins."
Yeah. You need space.
Yeah. And so they tell him about the Demon Lord.
Well, eventually they do. He kind of like, because doesn't he also meet like a creature from like the Black Lagoon, like that weird aqua thing?
A kappa.
Kappa, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was along the way of looking for this Dragon Lord that I thought it was like, they didn't make it too much of a big deal in this episode, I think. But I thought it kind of like resonated with me, at least, because it felt like Letty was finally talking to somebody meek, somebody small. And this Kappa, it's the only Kappa that's living in this big, beautiful lake. And Letty's like, this is a nice place. And he's like, yeah, I know. I got recommended by this elf guy. He's kind of cool. I highly recommend him. He found the best spot for me.
Yeah, you start hearing about the Demon Lord before he even shows up.
Yeah. And that character is Dearia. And talk about a fascinating character.
Yeah, very much so. He is, it's hard to begin to describe Dearia because he's a very charismatic kind of like, usually when I watch isekai or I watch fantasy anime and they introduce elves, usually they're standoffish. Usually they're, kind of angry sometimes.
They have like a better than thou attitude mostly.
Yeah, the way they're handled in a lot of shows, they're just kind of like angry humans.
Yeah.
When you watch Dragon Goes Househunting, and you meet Dearia, you're like, this is what an elf should be.
Oddly enough, and more, I think what you're saying is true. Even I hate to bash The Hobbit here, but I'm gonna bash The Hobbit, the movie,
Okay.
the Peter Jackson, whatever. I know. What else is there to be said? It's similar to the Star Wars prequels, but it has a charming effect. They're all watchable at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But what's weird about the Hobbit trilogy, in my humble opinion, is when they go to Legolas's sanctuary. That's where like the franchise died for me.
Oh no.
That whole exchange, that whole like sequence.
Yeah.
And what was weird is that in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson, movies, basically the elves were like mythical and they were like distant. They didn't want to deal with anything. And I felt like that was elf-like. In the Hobbit trilogy, they're like very dismissive and evil. Like I guess they saw the or side of elves. Even in the Hobbit, the book story, they kind of had that demeanor too.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, the more I think about it, so like the tone just didn't fit. Like somehow somebody still needed that balance, and for whatever reason, Dearia kind of has that balance, but he does it more in the sense of like, no, I am all powerful and wise.
But without saying it,
without even mentioning one peep or bragging rights.
No, it's just like it's this. He's very charismatic.
Yes.
From the word go.
Yes.
Like, who is this? I'm intrigued.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, in that first episode, near the end of the episode and on towards the second episode, Letty's being attacked by these random bandits. That's part.
No, they're not bandits.
Oh, they're the adventurers. Good call.
They're heroes.
They're heroes.
They're specifically called heroes.
Yes,
Dearia calls them heroes.
Ah.
And this is one of my favorite things about this show. Because you have all these fantasy creatures, all these fantasy monsters that are essentially just going about their lives.
Yeah.
Whether they be slimes or kappas or goblins.
And everyone kind of has a role too.
Yeah. So they're all just like living in their own communities. And then here come the humans, the heroes, in quotations, who are essentially just like messing up their lives.
They're pretty much like the thugs and everything bad.
Letty has done nothing to anyone. He has run away. He has been chased. He is essentially the victim.
Yeah.
And the heroes show up, and right away they see dragon. We have to kill the dragon.
We get all this
dragons
gold.
Are evil.
Yeah.
Dragons. We have to take the dragons out. And Letty's like, "What? No, just leave me alone. I don't want to do this." Like, we have to fight dragon. Do we have to?
Yeah.
Letty's like, "No, we really don't have to fight." He's like, "Please go away." And the hero's like, "No." He's like, "You're being kind of selfish."
and that's the thing. Like even like rendition of it, once you see it in action, it's just beautiful because it's good back and forth.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. The writing, the script is great because it's like some things are so deadpan. And Letty's reactions to things are it's funny in every episode. He's just like, what?
Just figuring out this fantasy world like us, like the audience. So.
Yeah.
But he meets up Dearia.
But Dearia saves his life.
Yes, from the adventurers.
Yeah, he saves his life from the adventurers. He essentially...
wipes him out clean.
Yep.
Like it's nothing.
And then... and Letty is terrified. He's absolutely terrified.
No, but
he's like, "What just happened?"
Well, because Dearia, he basically is like, "Oh, that was nothing. What do you need?"
Like, "Oh, they'll respawn. Don't worry about them."
Because what Dearia is at the end of the day, like we mentioned, he's built up this lore with other creatures and the world itself. He retired from being a demon lord to being a real estate agent.
Yeah, it's very odd, because you're like, and that's one of the cool things about the show. Getting Dearia's his backstory is very interesting as well.
And a little bit later on,
and there's a lot of parallels to Letty, and so I can see why they join up.
Yeah,
even going beyond just like Dearia trying to find a home for him. He's trying to essentially be his guide in this world.
Yeah.
And I thought it's a really cool relationship between the two of them. Dearia is not the most considerate person.
No,
Yeah.
and because he's that eternal, like so removed from society because he's that powerful and wise, in the typical elf, and
He's very distracted.
that as well because
I
he
think,
he
yeah.
he has an agenda in mind too, and it turns out to be his passion of selling real estate.
Yes. And it's like, what? And in later episodes, you find out how Dearia got into the real estate business.
Yeah.
But we'll get that into the second. So now begins the actual finding of a house.
Yes.
And each episode is broken down into essentially Dearia trying to find a home for Letty or setting up a home for Letty and how everything goes wrong.
Yeah. Well, and also, like I keep on mentioning with the beginning tone, because it's set up like a documentary, but it's also set up like a home. What's that channel? The home channel, House Network.
Yeah, it's
like a cable access show.
Yeah,
of checking out different real estates from like tiny mobile homes to like big fancy mansions, cribs.
The
MTV's
show,
cribs, yeah.
the show is essentially making fun of all those house hunting shows.
Yes.
And it's like it goes through like the dungeon.
Yep.
It goes through
the practicalities
Yeah.
for a dungeon.
Yeah, like
things like that.
Like, oh, here we have our traps.
Yeah.
Here, yeah.
And Letty, of course, being like, okay, this looks nice. Then again, fall in one of those traps.
He falls into all the traps. That's he continuously falls into all the traps.
But Daria means well. It's not like he's trying to trying to swerve him or like try to get a good deal out of this imbecile of a dragon. He actually wants to legit help out Letty.
Well, he's a dragon, so Dearia's like, well, dragons live in dungeons. You know, they have caves.
The practicality.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you need some place that's big that will work for you. This will work for you. It does not. Letty, I think that this is part of their getting to know you phase, where you get to know your real estate agent essentially gets to know.
And Letty's far from being a normal dragon.
Right.
Yeah. So the typical castle, you would think, or like a cave, out of the picture.
It's not going to work.
No,
especially not when the heroes show up.
But it comes to a point where the area, he basically is like, you know what? I'm just going to do reverse tactics here. What do you want at the end of the day, Letty? And Letty, you would think like, I don't know. At this point, you wouldn't like think this, I would argue. But he mentions, I want to live in a nice little cottage.
I want to live in a nice little home with a fireplace and a bed where I can feel safe and comfortable.
And when they do that kind of sequence, they show Letty, a big chair, sipping tea, cute little stuff like that. It's I love it.
It's adorable. It's absolutely adorable.
And who wouldn't want that? Like, like I said, Letty's pretty much like us. And if we were in this fantasy where we want to be away from the nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, you definitely want to be away from the heroes.
That as well.
Everybody wants to be away from the heroes. It's like, oh God, they keep showing up. Like I remember the two slimes at the beginning.
Yeah.
When Dearia is showing them.
That was a good setup.
Yeah, he's showing them this cave, and they're like, "Yeah, we're sick of the heroes showing up and trying to kill us all the time. We just want someplace where they can't get to us, and we'll just, and we can have our children."
And that's another thing about the show too. It's kind of like a science, like a Bill Nye the Science Guy type of like special where, okay, a typical slime, you need something cool and vibrant and like stuff to get your mana with.
Well, it really goes into like the actual needs of like these fantasy creatures.
Yes, correct.
And that's really interesting.
And also the practicalities of the environment and how to fund for the houses.
Yeah, well, they get into the weeds when it comes to like how to build your home, how to finance your home, where to get your money from, all kinds of stuff.
I know.
And so it gets pretty interesting. It's very, like I said, it combines this fantasy world with a lot of like modern tropes.
Yeah.
And the interplay between them. And I've seen other shows like vaguely try to do this.
Yeah.
But I don't think very many do it as well as Dragon Goes Househunting.
Yeah. Well, and like I mentioned with Letty getting, or Dearia getting feedback for Letty, and he's like, you know what? I'll do that. I'll hire these dwarves. They'll do, or who does he hire?
The gnomes.
The gnomes. Good call. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he hires these gnomes to do a quick ass job, and like that.
Well, they build Letty a mansion.
Yes.
And so Letty's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you, Dearia. Now I can live in peace. And so he's in his house and he's like, but wait, won't the heroes come attack me? And he's like, I have a solution for that. So he gets these, he gets these really buff monsters, like
A guild.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually they're the monster version of adventurers.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, these are going to be the ones protecting your home.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Okay, I guess. And so the heroes find out about his home because Dearia lets it slip that essentially this place exists and that,
And more people are like, oh, we have to get it for gold. And
they think, okay, the dragon lives there, so there must be gold.
Yeah,
It must be like a dungeon. It looks like a cottage. It looks like
you're like, oh, you know what? I don't want to get gold. I want to get a nice cup of tea right
I know
here.
it looks
I don't want to sleep for an hour or two.
it looks like a European cottage that could be an inn. It's very welcoming. I don't know how the heroes get into their head that this is a dungeon. And so then they go and Letty's sleeping and all of a sudden there's this huge racket and he's like terrified out of his sleep.
Yeah.
And he goes to see what's happening, and the monsters are fighting the heroes and stealing their equipment. And he's like, don't kill them. And they're like, all right, boss. Can we take their stuff? He's like, yeah, keep it. I don't care. And so he can't sleep.
Yeah.
He can't sleep. And then suddenly, every monster in the area is coming to live with him because they feel like they'll be protected by the storm dragon.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Yeah, you're the doom dragon that's going to destroy the world. He's like, how did I get this reputation?
And that's part of the show, too, and more I think about lore. Like, actual gossip and, like, what we think, playing that game of telephone. Like, you hear one story and it embellishes to another.
Oh, yeah.
And they think Letty is the ultimate dragon.
Yeah, he's the dragon that's going to destroy the world.
But also, when you go back to the cottage thing and all these ventures and these bodyguards, defending Letty, Dearia gives a reality check towards Letty. And he's like, well, Letty, I hate to tell you this. Got to pay up. Got to pony up.
Yep.
Yep.
So he sells his teeth. He sells his baby teeth in order to be able to afford it.
And it was like one of those things like, is this worth much? And Diaria's like, you're covered.
Okay.
It covers for at least a month, I guess.
Yeah. It covered it, but you get the sense that Dearia was kind of playing him.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, to like educate him.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is not going to go well.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of like the charming aspect of the show, too. Is like Dearia does these little adventures with Letty because it feels like Dearia is ultimately like getting Letty ready for the grand world out there.
He essentially is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of become like his he's his guide.
Yeah.
His kind of like a substitute father figure.
Yeah.
Bringing him into the world and showing him like this is the world and this is what it's like. But he's so nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
It's like he cares, but he doesn't care.
No.
Because he is so nonchalant and so like detached, it comes across as like the biggest ass. But at the same time, you can tell that he cares about Letty.
Yeah.
And that he wants Letty to grow and, learn how to deal with these things on his own.
Yeah, and just having the adventure, as it were.
Well, that's what this show is really about. First I want to talk about the haunted house episode.
Oh,
because I love that episode.
Surprisingly, okay.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
I like that it plays on those horror movie tropes.
Yeah.
Like at one point it switches to the first person.
Yeah.
Like a horror game. And I thought that was the way.
It reminded me a lot of Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Or the game that influenced Resident Evil. It was a Nintendo game or a computer game. I forget it, but it's literally the same tone. And the same point of view, like tactics too.
Yeah, it's very it plays with a lot of the horror tropes.
Yeah.
And I thought that was hilarious because
yeah.
they do it pretty well.
No.
They do it for this being a show that's about fantasy.
Yeah.
To switch it up like that, I thought was really cool.
Well, good starting point to talk about this topic because like watching this show, I liked it, and definitely like the directions like really good for what they did, because you could tell it's one of those shows where the budget's just not there, the quality's just not there, but it works. It works like it works as it should, kind of thing.
Well, I think that the writing, the direction, the humor, all of those things, even the music sometimes, I thought the music was really well done.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially the intro.
And the intro song is actually not that bad either.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like it quite a bit. I think it works as a fantasy.
And it's kind of like sing-songing and like silly. Dun, 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 dun,
Well, I think that's the whole. It's kind of like you can see, like, if there were words to it, you can see like the dwarves like
Yeah.
singing it with like pints of beer,
yeah.
kind of thing. So I think that works really well.
And it shows all the influences too. Like it shows like I like a lot of intros that do this nowadays, where they mix it like a video game character, a Super Nintendo game, or kind of like Final Fantasy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's blending like fantasy with fantasy games.
Yes.
And I think that's because I think that's where your audience is going to have the most experience
Pretty
with
much
this kind
us.
of thing.
Pretty much
unless,
us.
Yeah, I mean, unless they're playing D&D, they're playing fantasy games, and so they know where these tropes are coming from.
Yeah.
But I think that the studio, while sometimes the artwork isn't as well done as some other shows.
Noticeable, at least when you're used to most other like higher produced anime.
Yeah, like I mean, the production for the animation sometimes it isn't there.
Yeah.
But the thing about this show is that it doesn't need to be.
No, far from. That's what I'm trying to get at.
It doesn't need to be. It's firing. It's like, so is it Kobayashi's Dragon Maid? No.
No, far no.
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be, because this show isn't the kind of show that, 10 years from now, you're going to be like, oh my God, this was one of my favorite shows of all time. No. It entertains you. It tells you a good story. It makes you laugh. That's literally all it has to do. And it does that. And I think it does that really well.
Yeah. And it's also, you're along for the ride. Like a lot of these shows, like this is one of our main purposes of our podcast, because they definitely get kind of buried on the sand of other great shows.
Yeah.
And this one's a case study, because I feel like it would have crossed over easily with Adult Swim, because Adult Swim is like notorious for cheap productions that they do. Like, yeah, this looks kind of cool. This would be perfect for Adult Swim right now.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think this is the kind of show where like it could just be pretty much anywhere.
Literally anywhere.
Yeah, because I don't think the jokes are too hard to understand.
Even if it was like translating the same translation, it makes sense.
Yeah. Like, I think this is something like if you showed, even if you had somebody who wasn't an anime fan,
Yeah.
and you played this for them, like anybody who plays D&D, anybody who plays any kind of fantasy games online,
Yeah.
I think that they could easily get the tropes and the jokes and find it humorous.
Yeah.
I mean, they do get cheesy, and there's a lot of dad jokes.
Well,
but
along the way.
yeah, but I think that if you have any kind of affection for cheesiness and dad jokes, that you'll adore this show.
Well, speaking of dad jokes, this is part of the adventure aspect of the show, because when you think of a typical adventure, like Lord of the Rings, like even like a adventure, like even like a simple premise like Tron, the main character grows along the way, and Letty grows because he turns out to be a daddy.
Yeah.
He goes to this one house that Dearia tries to do, and that's a cool episode too, because it's technically at this point like 180, because they're in a different environment, a cold Arctic environment, and as Dearia is trying to get Letty situated with his new quote unquote new home, Letty ends up on his own little mini adventure. He gets separated far away from Dearia. This is the first time Letty's on his own. Well, the Haunted House episode is definitely like shits and giggles, but this one's like, oh shit, he could be like lost for months and months and months.
He could die.
But he turns out to be saved by Jonah and the whale.
That's not Jonah. Wait, what is that?
No, because isn't that the same episode where he gets into the whale?
Yeah, but that's not Jonah. That's
I know, I'm kidding. It's the
oh,
it's a reference.
it's okay. It's Davy Jones.
Davy Jones.
Yeah,
Well, Jonah and Whale story where he gets inside
he
the
gets
whale.
swallowed by a whale.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And Pinocchio. And and basically Letty's like having like this is a cool episode because Letty is finally similar to the Black or the Kappa in the beginning episode where he's essentially like talking to a person where he's situated and comfortable with himself. He's like, yeah, you know what? It's not that bad at the end of the day. This Davy Jones is pretty much inside of this whale, and it's very, very practical. But it's his home, and you have that sense too. And Letty ends up. Is it because Letty? I have to retract a little bit. When Letty gets Pip, is it one of the eggs that David Jones is about to eat?
No.
Okay.
So, to backtrack a little bit, Letty has lost his home.
Yes.
And because he does not want to live there anymore.
Yeah.
The home that Dearia has built for him, because now it's full of monsters. So Dearia takes him to some place that's void of people, and he leaves him there. He's like, I'm going to leave you here for a few days so that you can learn how to survive on your own in the wild. And Letty's like, what? That goes horribly wrong.
Uh-huh.
There is a fever dream that involves igloos and a shirtless Dearia. Yes. So, trying to escape from the wilderness, he finds himself near the ocean, and he finds himself on a raft of ice with an egg. And
there you go. And then
yeah.
eventually with the whale.
Yeah, he tries to save the egg from predator. He takes the eggs with him, I believe, because he is hungry, and he plans on eating the egg.
Yes.
But at the end, he can't do it because he feels that that's someone's egg, and so he takes it with him to protect it from predators. And then he gets swallowed by the whale. Yeah.
And mind you, this is like the 4th or 5th episode because, like I said, it's the total 180. It's definitely the most adventurous of the bunch. And like survival mode to the T. And
well, I think he gets when he's introduced to Davy Jones, it is a very different personality than Dearia. It's a more like, well, Dearia is like essentially this is what homes you can get.
Yeah.
He's more of a real estate agent. With when he meets Davy Jones, he is essentially gets to see like Davy Jones is like explains to him, this is my life, this is my house, this is how I do things, and this is why I have things.
Yeah.
And so for Letty, it's kind of like an eye-opening experience. Yeah. Like, oh, I can have like these things, and these are the kind of things that I want from a home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reality aspect of too, because as an audience member, you're watching that and you're like, yeah, I remember going to a nice little house and seeing this. Like I have family all over, and each one, I've always want that little piece of what they have. Just a little piece. Like if I had my own house, this is what I want. Mm-hmm. My own garden and things like that. Everyone wants to have that aspiration.
Yeah. And I think that's where he finally gets like, oh, this is kind of what I want.
Yeah.
But this isn't for me. I don't want to live inside of a dragon.
Yeah.
And so it's while Letty has failed being able to survive on his own, I think he has got an idea of what it is that he wants from a home.
Yeah.
He's starting to be like, well, yes, I want a home like this, but I don't want to live inside of a dragon. It's a choice these are choices that he's making.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as part of the growth aspect of the show.
So now, essentially, Letty's become a father.
Yes.
Because with the egg hatches, and essentially Pip is a thunderbird.
Almost deity, like a god.
Yeah, essentially he can cause storms and Peachan.
Yes.
Or Pip, as he comes to be known. So essentially now Letty's a dad.
Yeah. And how it's handled is similar to our current isekai me and Edwin adore at the moment, the Skeleton Knight from another world.
Yes.
Where the Skeleton Knight adopts a nine-tail.
Yeah, a spirit creature.
Yeah, and similar tone, like a very cute animal. It's also a handful, big time handful.
Yes.
Yeah, it in a heavy-handed investment.
Yeah. So Letty's like, what am I gonna do with this?
Yeah.
And Dearia's like, well, you're gonna have to take care of him now. You removed him from his environment. He can't go back now.
Yep. and it's one of those things where, like we mentioned earlier with Letty knowing the finances and stuff. What do you do in a fantasy world when you need money?
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do?
Get a job.
What kind of job, though? At least for Letty.
Well, okay, so Letty doesn't automatically become a dad.
Exactly.
He still needs a place to live, and now he needs a place to leave Pip because he's a scaredy dragon. How is he going to take care of a kid? He can't. He's a kid himself. So he's like, how am I going to do this? So Dearia introduces him to essentially community living.
Yes.
These aren't houses. These are apartments.
Yeah, and just like modern day living, honestly.
He talks about landlords, and he takes them to essentially a community where the landlord is usually a bigger monster who fends off heroes and smaller monsters so that the little monsters can live in peace.
Yeah.
So Letty's like, oh, this is a perfect place to leave Pip. I will find somebody to leave in his care. And the jokes about so you get jokes about people who live in apartments, and it's hilarious. You get the father who has like 20 kids. You get the couple who has a bunch of cats. You get into all those fights. You get it gets really funny.
And each one's fanatical creature. It's like, why are they living in commune together?
You're like, why are you living here?
And they're homogenous, and literally take on modern day society.
Yeah, you get all those like apartment dweller tropes.
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny. But at the end of the episode, Letty is essentially left to watch not only Pip, but these other kids.
Yeah.
And so when they're attacked by this larger monster, Letty has to be brave. Letty has to be brave, and he has to defend them.
Yeah.
And he manages to do it. He manages to hold off the monster until Dearia and the father return. And Dearia tells the monsters, like, well, do you know that's the Doom Dragon? And he's like, that's him?
That lore helps him out in the long run.
The rumors about the exaggerated rumors about him being the dragon that will end the world help him out.
Yeah.
They help him out. And so I think it's at that moment where he realizes that he doesn't want to give Pip up. He decides to take care of Pip himself, and that he's going to be a dad.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where Letty, I don't know, like, that's the one thing I oddly didn't think twice about, because Letty's such a neurotic, such a pansy, that even like a possibility of father is just like out of the whim. And it seems like Pichon is definitely not hard to handle, but
no,
it's just a matter of like
handling him.
And
he's got to be taken care of.
And I would dare say, like, if you own a dog or a cat or any other domestic animal, there's that aspect where you can do it, but you have to do it. That's the thing. You have to feed it, you have to clothe it.
You can't be irresponsible now.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the reason they do that in Dragon Goes Househunting is to show Letty's growth.
Yeah.
He can't be brave for himself, but he can be brave for others.
Yeah. And then once again, Dearia kind of putting it in motion, but also kind of being like a person like his father, I would argue, kind of like giving him that distance to grow.
Yeah. Dearia does that to him repeatedly.
And it becomes a gag.
It becomes a real gag, because it's like Letty starts to question whether or not Dearia cares about him.
Yeah.
Do you really care about me? You keep putting me in these situations.
Well, it becomes an arc, and it becomes a mid arc, which is probably if I had to pick my favorite sequence of the show, it is, because it's really cool. And that's when Letty gets recruited at the Colosseum.
Oh, that was hilarious. I don't even know what you could call. So the Colosseum essentially breaks down as Vegas.
Yeah,
it's essentially their version of Vegas, because you have all of these monsters that are essentially captured by the humans and put in this Colosseum to
fend for the ways.
Well, to perform, but like the way they have the the way they all have their little areas set up, so it plays on these tropes again, these fantasy tropes.
Yeah.
And Dearia has his worst. Letty has his worst fears about what's going to happen to him and Pimp. It's like, oh my god, what's going to happen to us? And then the guard, the one of the main guys comes along and opens the thing. He's like, was that always open? He's like, yeah, dude, we don't lock the cages. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yep.
And he's like, what kind of prison is this?
Yeah.
And so he starts showing everybody everything, and they're all playing cards and drinking. And then the guards show up. Sorry, we're late. Let's get into the party.
Well, it
And
makes you think.
Letty's like, what is going on here? He's like, well, this is just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, it ties into the aspect of, like you said, Vegas, kind of like a show business aspect. Like we're there to perform. We have a system. We have a good thing going.
Yeah.
Free stay, free food. We're making side money too.
Yeah.
And one of the characters that's kind of like giving in a deets is this horse character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was good. He was a good character because he kind of like has his his thing going. The harpy, a couple other fanatical creatures, and the guards, and also what the Colosseum is at the end of the day, or what the Colosseum alludes to, is fighting. And similar to ancient Rome with the gladiators, you have a spectacle where a hero tries to fend off the dragon, and the dragon loses.
Yeah.
It's almost like wrestling too. Like, okay, the heel loses when the babyface wins.
It's a show.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're putting on a show
for a live audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're putting on a show for a live audience, and they love it. And it's a pretty cushy job for him. And of course it gets ruined because this is Dragon Goes Househunting, not Dragon Performs.
No.
And so it gets ruined. And I love the joke about the cardboard box. That was
well, to set it up, these adventurers tried to dive.
Yeah.
They try to be self-righteous. Like, we have to stop this.
Yeah.
I'm not this is part of the weak aspect of the show. You don't know like the true motive with a lot of these heroes. And that was the case study with that.
Well, I think I love the fact that the heroes are kind of played as jerks.
Yes.
That just show up and ruin everything.
And without rhyme or reason.
Yeah. Well, it's like, they're monsters. They must be bad. They must be up to no good.
Yeah.
Let's take them out, even though these guys have hurt no one.
Yeah. It makes you think how the aspect of ancient Rome with gladiators, how it officially ended. I'm not 100% sure what the history of that, but it makes you think. Maybe the gladiators are like, we're making some side money, and they didn't like that. Who knows?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. It could have been a factor.
Yeah. It's called the Fall of Rome, Jack.
Fall of Rome, but also like kind of like the business side of things, like how did it really operate? So you never know.
Well, I'm sure there were bribes and like.
Well, that's what I mean. Like you sacrifice yourself, we'll help you compensate for your family. Good. Well, you know what? That's worth it.
Well, the guy in the show, the guy who's running Colosseum, he dies.
Yes.
And he passes away, and so like everything goes to shit. It's like, oh no, everything's going wrong now.
And now it becomes a cool like cliffhanger moment because Letty has to fend again with this team because the team is they're in dire straits. But what I like about the team is that they're pretty much like had a backup plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So part of the backup plan is their escape.
Yeah.
For the Colosseum. We could have left, years ago if we really wanted to.
Yeah. Well, no, this was, it becomes kind of like an escape adventure movie.
Yeah.
And they have the Metal Gear cardboard box.
Yes. To distract the adventurers, quote unquote.
And then I love that they have the dirty magazine. They leave out the dirty magazine to distract the adventurers.
As a trap, yeah.
Yeah, and then they knock them out afterwards. And then, of course, Dearia shows up to save the day.
Yeah.
And Letty's like, it's been a week. Where have you been? He's like, were you worried about me? Did you leave me on my own just so that I can grow? He's like, Dearia's like, sure.
Well, Dearia is also kind of like a pro, so he probably had like a couple of houses to sell money.
Well, no, he's been in that entire time he was having a drinking contest.
Good call.
Yeah,
his own adventure.
Yeah, he was having a drinking contest that went on for a few days.
Yes.
So yeah, he was distracted. Oh man,
but that's ultimately like the aspect of the show where. Well, like you didn't even expect like having an arc there, and there you go. That was a good like 1-2 punch right there.
Well, each episode, even when it's not much going on, there's still like a lot going on in an odd way.
And then, and we didn't even mention this world, or we didn't even mention this word yet. and it's pretty much apparent with the show world building.
Yeah.
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 Not with the political aspect, not with the kingdom aspect, more with the creatures and the scenarios.
Well, I think that they just took a lot when they sat down. I think they really know fantasy tropes.
Yeah.
They really know fantasy tropes, and they sat down and they're like, we're going to explore these different fantasy tropes. And that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the creatures of this world, how that would play in a more like modern kind of like take on it.
Yeah.
And so that's why you get like these different environments and these different situations that are very much, of a fantasy set. They start out to be, even like Letty has his own misconceptions about like when he's kidnapped and taken to the Colosseum, he's like, he has his own idea of
he's
what this is going to be about.
Much, yeah.
Of what's going to happen to him. And the show, as usual, plays against those expectations for humorous effect.
Yeah, but also similar to Miss Kobayashi's Dragonmaid, the lore aspect of it, the fable aspect of it becomes apparent finally once we get to see the background of Dearia, and Dearia is quite fascinating.
Well, Dearia had a very similar upbringing to Letty in kind of a way, where
pushed into like adulthood.
Yeah, well, he's very different as well as the people around him because he wants knowledge. He wants to learn.
Know everything.
Yeah, he doesn't want to live the way the other elves live.
The Dark Lords and all that.
Well, this isn't even to do with the Dark Lords yet. It's just like him living in the Tree of Life.
Oh yeah, the elfish community.
The elvish community where he's like doing stuff that he's learned in books, and they're like, no, you can't do this. So they send him to live with the serpent.
Yeah.
With that gigantic serpent spirit. And that's a hilarious episode in and of its own. But this whole arc, which is essentially the Dearia arc.
Yeah.
Where it's a flashback to when he was young. And essentially he's going through the same things that Letty went through, but in his own ways. This is where he makes his connections and he learns, like he meets the witches that provide him with materials, and he builds homes because the serpent spirit is essentially teaching him about the world.
Yeah.
But the serpent spirit essentially is as big as a snake that's as big as a mountain and actually has several mountains on her.
Yeah.
And so she keeps destroying his homes, so he has to keep rebuilding them. And as he's doing that, he's learning about different building materials, learning from her about the world,
environments.
It's kind of like the education of Dearia.
Yeah, and almost like the naivete of the teacher. Like, okay, you can do this on your own. Yeah. And yeah, that's more of like the awakening aspect of the show. And this is where the budget really went. It spent every penny because the goddess is gorgeous. And
yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
it was
the animation and the artwork for that was really
once
good.
Again, similar Ghibli, similar to like this fanatical fable like swerve.
You keep saying fanatical, but I think you mean fantastical.
Fantastical. Good call. Because fanatical is more like the insanity aspect of it. Things. Okay, fair enough. Good call. See, and Edwin as well, my senpai.
Oh, you can cut that part out.
Oh no, it's all good. Oh. No, I agree. This is part of it.
Yeah. So this essentially is, you see how Dearia got into. Essentially, how he has similarities to Letty, and how they kind of like grow, how they both had to, like, they both were kicked out of their homes, and they both had to learn about the world. And it's at this point in time where Dearia meets the Black Dragon.
Yes.
And the Black Dragon wants a home. And he wants
Letty.
Yep. And he wants Dearia to help him find a home. And so it becomes this adventure where the way that Letty has been learning about the world, this was how it was this journey with the Black Dragon, who's a very strange character.
He's the 180 of Letty.
Yeah, he's like the exact opposite of Letty. He's kind of like, he is
a dragon.
The Doom Dragon.
He is the dragon.
He is the dragon. Yeah. He's the dragon that everybody fears.
But he's not evil.
No,
he's just
he's he's very how do I put
He
this?
reminds me a little bit of the character in Jujutsu Kaisen, the best friendo.
I can see that. But I think a more apt description would be he's John Candy. John Candy played a lot of roles like this,
Kind of like this.
like the great outdoors.
Yeah. Kind of
Yeah.
like the buff.
Planes, trains,
Yeah, kind of
automobiles.
like the smart buffoon kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like a gruff and
Yeah.
like gruff and tough.
Yeah.
Gruff and tough.
But soft in the middle.
Yeah, but soft in the middle. And so like my Uncle Buck.
Yeah, one of the
Yeah.
greatest.
So I see a lot of similarities in the Doom Dragon, the Black Dragon. I see a lot of similarities
Yeah.
in the personality types. And so it's kind of like it becomes that could have been a show into it in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because they're such an odd couple. And he's like, the Black Dragon just kind of wants to be friends with Dearia.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, you're kind of cool. You know a bunch of stuff. You could teach me, but I can't really ask you because I have my pride.
Yeah.
So, like, let's do this stuff together.
They're in equal terms. And similar to Elma and similar to Kobayashi, or similar to Elma and Tohru.
Yes, very much. That relationship is very similar to these
They're
two.
the equal grounds, but they have definitely have different philosophies. They're just along with the ride at the moment.
Yeah. Like, it's like, here we are together. We're essentially going to it, like with Elma and Tohru, they're essentially going to become sisters.
Yeah.
Sisters who don't talk to each other because they're, they argue and they fight, but there's that closeness.
They have a stubborn love.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so. And Dearia and the Black Dragon, that's what comes to pass between the two of them.
Yeah, it becomes ahead too, unfortunately. And similar to Tohru and Elma, once again, it took about 100 years a long time to find an actual home.
For them to figure, for them, their adventures to conclude.
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah, but those are some of the funniest moments in the entire show because the Black Dragon just wants to go around beating up adventurers. He's like, nah, I'm just going to destroy this place.
It has that one point because I remember you described me the show at one point. It was one of our previous episodes.
Yeah.
He beats up a little castle. It's a side thing, a little small side bit, but they timed this joke perfectly because he's like, later nerds.
He does. It's like
a total like, and that's the Adult Swim aspect of it. Like, this will be perfect on Adult Swim.
Yeah, it was a total burn. And you felt that. You felt the burn. And it was just so in keeping with his character.
And with the voice too. It's just like, oh my God.
It works perfectly. And it's one of the things that it's that their way of the creators, it's their way of infusing like this modern sensibility into this really truly fantasy world that they keep like playing with your expectations constantly throughout the show.
Yeah.
And this never stops. There's never a moment where they say, all right, we're done. We're just going to coast the rest of the way. No, every single episode has this kind of like, here are the expectations. This is what should happen. This is what we're gonna give you, and it ends up being comedic gold.
Yeah, and it's timely placed. It's also a show you don't think twice about with the linear plot, but the adventures along the way kind of build it anyway.
Well, you don't really need to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something where you're like, oh, I have to know what happens next.
Yeah.
It's more like I'm going to be entertained by what happens next.
It's one of those shows, unfortunately, where you don't think about the final episode coming up. Similar like Skeleton Knight, for example. Like, oh shit, I can't wait for
it's almost over. Yeah, it's almost over.
Because
like, I don't want it to end.
Yeah, because you just don't know what the next adventure is going to be.
No,
they have like a Pip adventure. They have like a random one where speaking of finances, Letty has to deal with taxes.
Oh my god.
Death and taxes.
Yep.
Death and taxes.
Well, there's the introduction. So the final arc of the show is the introduction of Nell.
Yes.
Who is a princess.
Kind of her take control type of princess.
Oh yeah.
Not your typical princess,
no.
honey. No.
I love so she has run away from home.
Uh-huh.
And we have another person who has left their home because she did not want to share her dessert with her dad. How dare her father eat the second cupcake? Yeah. How dare he even ask? What is his problem? He's a jerk. Yeah. So this is what this is what Letty and Dearia now have to deal with.
Yeah.
And so Dearia, being the helpful person that he is, she's like, I'll help you find a home. And so she's like, well, I need this. And so he shows her a waterfall. It's like, this is a waterfall. This isn't a home. He's like,
he's more tied in with fantasy creatures than anything.
Yeah. Having a human client
is like over him.
But the way he plays it is so hilarious because there's no like
in between.
Well, he's not being like sarcastic and
no,
he's not being ironic.
He's trying to help.
He's like, here's a home. Here you go. It has these amenities.
He doesn't crack with the jokes. He's totally straight with it.
Yep, he's totally straight with it. And the princess is like, what is wrong with you guys? It's like, are you crazy?
Yeah, and she's not a big fan of Letty.
No, well, because Letty is such a coward, and she's like, you're such a coward. It's like, how are you even taking care of Pip? Like, she bonds with Pip pretty quickly because Pip is Pip.
Pip is Pip.
She's like, what are you doing? It's like, you can't even take care of yourself. How are you taking care of this child?
Yeah.
And Letty's all hurt. But they do manage to bond over the course. The heroes help them to bond because the heroes show up and Letty has to save her. Well, they have to save each other from the heroes because the douchebag heroes once again it's like
hired by the king to save the princess.
Yes, here they are. We have to save the princess, and they're like, "No, please, for the love of God, go away. When will you learn your lesson?"
They learned their lesson, unfortunately.
When you get your final apartment, which is a dungeon used to train heroes.
Yes.
And so there are monsters. It's a government business. It's government run. It's run by the kingdom. And so they enter this dungeon looking for the apartments. And that's when everything goes wrong.
Yeah. Well, I like how it's set up too because it feels like an old school like RPG from the NES type of days. And it has a nice little like hallway scene, little traps here and there.
Yeah.
But guess what? The climax.
Yes, it leads to, it's essentially this dungeon is also an escape from the palace.
From where the princess is from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the king has left the castle with an army to go save the princess from the doom dragon. That she's been captured by. Little do they know, they're in the castle.
Yep.
And so suddenly Letty has to go from being a coward and from being a coward to defending a castle. And Dearia goes through how to defend a castle. The gnomes show up and
the gnomes technically are the heroes.
Yeah.
They're the true MVPs.
They are. Throughout the entire series. And so Letty essentially has to defend the castle from,
hordes and hordes of soldiers.
Yeah, soldiers and knights. And they go through systematically. They go through like, this is how you defend a castle. These are the different ways to defend a castle. Dearia shows them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Letty realizes that this isn't about them. This is about Nell getting back together with her father.
Yeah, reconciling. And they do. They find a way.
Well, he uses himself as bait.
Yeah.
He's brave. He becomes brave enough to use himself as bait to lure the king into the room where Nell is.
Yeah.
And that shows the massive amount of growth where Letty's,
literally willing at this point, I would argue. Yeah.
Willing to put himself in danger, not to save the princess, but to save her relationship with her father.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Very.
Which is huge, which shows a huge amount of growth on his part.
Yeah.
And so Nell is able to reconcile with her father, but you realize that maybe she's a little bit in love with Letty now.
Oh, and I like how it concludes basically because it's a quintessentially fairy tale ending, like a storybook, like Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty, but it turns out to be royal propaganda.
They create the book,
because it makes the princess look like an adventurer, like she defeated
the
dragon,
the storm dragon.
Yes.
So they give Letty magic power. They give him the magic fairy dust, so that he can fly. And so finally he's flying with Dearia and Pip, and I love how it's like this is the end of their adventure,
Yeah.
but also the beginning. It's like, we'll figure it out.
For all I know, it will be a season 2. I'm not
That
sure
would
of
be
the
really
length
cool.
of the manga
Well, I love the fact that as they're flying through the sky, they see all the places
that they visited.
that they visited.
Yes, yes.
And Dearia asked Letty, so how do you feel about what your father did now? He's like, you know what? I'm not sure why he did what he did, but I'm kind of glad that he did because I was able to come out into the world and learn about it and grow.
Yeah.
And Diaria's like, you know what? That's the best thing that you've said. I think that you're on the right path.
Yeah, I know.
And so that's what these two shows I think have in common. These are both dragons that were kind of like kicked out of their worlds
Yeah.
and had to go on this journey of creating a family, of growing, of finding their place in the world, and becoming, becoming adults, like Tohru and her journey, and how we didn't expect it.
No, from far from it.
We didn't expect it for Tohru, and we didn't expect it for Letty.
Yeah.
We didn't expect them to go on these journeys where they grew so much. And unlike in Dragon Goes Househunting, with Tohru, nobody around her really expected her to grow as much as she did.
Far from it.
Yeah, but she did. She grew and she became a part of that world, and she grew into herself.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with Letty, he grew into the point where he could sacrifice himself for the ones that he loved.
Yeah, and also like going away from their norms, what they're expected, their
Well,
roles.
what we expected.
That as well.
You know,
Yes, yes, yes.
it's like Letty is the feared dragon, but
he's a softie.
He's a softie,
Yeah.
but I could see him getting there.
Yeah.
Getting to be like, this is somebody that you can't mess with because he'll protect
Yeah.
the people that he loves.
Hey, you finally got a little bit of hey, you deserve this. You finally can fly.
Yeah.
It's like duh.
Well, he'll fly until the
dust
wears off, but he flew.
Yeah.
And he was really happy.
Yeah.
And then he has a flashback to flying with his father.
Yes. That was cute. That's one of the cuter scenes.
It was a cute memory. And it was like, okay. So it's very endearing, it's very touching. For a show that you could tell that they didn't have the biggest budget for, I think it does an amazing, amazing job with every single cent that it spent.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's one of those things where this is why we also did the Dragon special. We highlight the most popular with misskobayashisdragonmaid, but this one, Under the Sand, needs to be resurfaced. And I'm looking at the rating right now through my anime list. I don't know why I do this. It's like a joke at this point. I don't even want to mention the score because I think it's an embarrassing score. It's a much better score than they gave.
Well, I think what happens is that those scores are based off of how many people liked it versus how many people. That the bigger shows are going to get more attention.
Yeah.
You just know that they are. You know that there's no way that this show can compete with Attack on Titan. It's just not.
Yeah,
It's just
even
not.
even shows that we're critical of, like Death Note and Sword Art Online. At least Jack is. Ultimately,
that's
my side, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
And basically, like, because we had a discussion with Jamal not too long ago over ratings and stuff, and we were looking at this random like updated list, and it's just a different range, shows we never even heard of. People, because the fandom itself of anime is definitely torn, definitely like agenda based, definitely like troll based, definitely like, no, this is actually really good based.
Well, I think that you have a lot of different anime for a lot of different people.
Yeah,
And I think that some shows are going to be more popular than others.
naturally.
And yeah, naturally. I mean, Attack on Titan is huge.
Yeah,
Demon Slayer is huge. But it's like, I think that or Jujutsu Kaisen, or One Piece. And while like we might not like all of those shows, there's reasons why they're the most popular shows.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we can both agree that there are reasons why these shows are so popular.
yeah,
But like what we've always tried to do on this podcast is shine a light on shows that we think deserve your
Yeah.
attention.
And this is one. And I feel like that score, if somebody's curious, will look at the score. Oh, that's not worth my time. No, like you'd be surprised. And like I said, it crosses over. Definitely could have been an Adult Swim. And Adult Swim I'm not gonna lie, a lot of their productions are like, oh, but it would be
Yeah.
definitely like a welcoming spot.
I think this is, if you like fantasy, I think it's like, yeah, like I said, it's a little cheesy. There's some like dad jokes. It doesn't
It doesn't take itself seriously. And
it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and I think that's fine. But I think if you're looking to watch something funny, something lighthearted and funny, where there's some character growth and that it's entertaining, I think this is a perfect show for that. So I say, hey, watch it.
Yeah,
Why
please,
not?
Please do. And we, like I said, we combined it with Dragon Maid and 1-2 punch right there.
Well, because like I said, this is about this, and this is one of the things that I love about anime, especially slice of life anime, is that, and we've been seeing this being done with a lot more fantasy, whether it be Kobayashi's Dragon Maid,
Princess Connect,
or Sleepy Princess the Demon Castle.
Yeah.
The theme is essentially you as a person going out into the world and building your circle of friends, finding these people that you care about, that, building a family, like with Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, or with, Dragon Goes Househunting. They build a family, they find they fall in love, they meet somebody. It's about their lives. It's about creating a life, creating a family. And, this is a theme that plays out in slice of life anime, but the way they're mixing it is like remixing it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's enjoyable. And I think these are shows that are worth watching.
Yeah. Well said, Edwin. And that will be it for Dragon Goes Househunting.
Yep. And that's the conclusion of our Dragon special. Thank you guys for tuning in.
We're going to be taking our first break. Coming up, we're going to have voice connections, manga recommends, wallet slayers, and finally, our general recommends. Stay tuned. Welcome back, guys. We're going to be doing our segment we do most of our end of our specials, the connections section. Connections are the voice actors in the studios that do these productions and how they interlink. And we like to highlight this because we want to emphasize the creative staff and give a little background on the production side of things.
Appreciation and respect for the people who do the work.
Yeah. And we're going to do first for Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, the voice actresses. I kind of cheated for a little bit because Tohru and Kobayashi have done great works, even Kanna. But I like to give a little shout out to Georgie because I think Georgie is one of the best characters in that show.
Georgie, the sister with the maid obsession.
Yes. And her and Kobayashi geek out over maids.
Oh, yeah.
In the history and lore. It's so cute. The actress that plays it is a lovely woman. Her name is Yuko Kotu. I also have to emphasize once again who my favorite character is in Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. And that is Elma. To Edwin's dismay, because Edwin's Tohru. Hey.
Yep.
And they're baddies. They're best baddies. So Elma, her actress is Yuki Takada, and she's also Rei Onodera from Love Is War, and also Aisha Grey Rat, the little kid Grey Rat, and also Mizelia from Grace of Gods.
Oh, cool.
And then for the English actress is Rachel Glass, who's also Kakeru Naruse in Orange, of all things. And she's also Silky in Ancient Mage's Bride. And my favorite thing, she's also Bakugo's mom.
Oh, nice.
for English, and she does an actually really good English rendition. So
Oh, very cool.
there you go.
Cool. And for my connections, we'll talk about Kyoto Animation,
Yes.
who was founded in 1985 and did Full Metal Panic, Full Metal Panic Second Raid, The Melancholy of Haruka Suzumiya,
Yes.
and Love Chinubio and Other Delusions.
Yes, I forgot they did that as well. It makes sense with Kobayashi's Dragonmaid.
Very similar.
Yeah, and,
especially the fight scenes.
and
Oh, yeah.
and also K-On! And Violet Evergarden. Both are prominent to this day.
Amazing shows.
Yeah, and also a quick shout out towards the Dragon Goes Househunting, because the main actors are really good. Dearia is also Nafumi.
Oh, yeah, that you mentioned that before.
Yeah, the similar serious overtones and how it's handled. He's one of the best out there, I would say.
I love Dearia's voice. Letty and Dearia's voice actors, whether it be the original Japanese or the dub, both of them, all of them do an amazing job of giving these characters life. It's phenomenal voice acting on their part.
Yeah. And the narration as well.
Special shout out to Stephen Kelly, who did Dearia's the English voice actor for Dearia, because he comes across as almost like a documentarian.
Yeah.
Like almost a sales, like you're it's almost like you're watching a how-to video on on real estate law.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's like, I'm like, he hasn't done much, but I'm like, this was amazing.
Yeah. That's kind of like the aspect of narration I respect even more now, because it's almost like, you know what? If you want to get a house in this fantasy world, watch this show.
There you go. Yep, that's the way to do it.
Yep.
And now for our first volume manga recommend.
Yes. For me, I'm going this route because it's been tough catching up with so much stuff. I'm reading the stuff like shows are ending, like Maruko-chan. I'm reading that. I'm cheating. Also, Sentence of a Bookworm, the light novel. I'm cheating. But I'm going back to the good stuff. I'm going to the stuff that I should read at this point. And one of them is one of Martin's all-time favorites, Azumanga Daioh. This is what it's all about. Like, I finally get it. Because like we mentioned, if you keep up with the show, I'm a late bloomer. Like manga, I've always had respect towards. I got them once I got more into anime, but over the last 3 years, I'm finally catching up, finally reading the stuff, and finally like collecting all the stuff. And this omnibus is one of the best out there, because it's almost like Garfield. It's almost like Peanuts, essentially, like these little instances of adventures, and rare you see that in an anime, because the anime goes in sequence, back and forth, and it keeps a streamline. But with this case, it's definitely like those little bubbles of life, and all the characters.
You get it's like, so you get like these slice of life little segments. That you can tell that the creators were influenced by comic strips.
Yes.
Because that's the format that it kind of gets delivered to you in.
Yeah.
I have seen this so much with Komi.
Yes.
It's
and Miss Kobayashi as well. Yeah.
But even more so with Komi, where it's like these little segments, and it just feels like you're reading a comic strip.
Yeah.
Like it would be Garfield or Peanuts.
Yeah.
And it's very, very much like that. And it's very, very comforting. And it gives you get attached to the characters, because there are so many little snippets, but they're done so well.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't read Azumanga Daioh. I want to watch the anime, but I get the sense from what you're saying that it's a very similar thing.
It's more aspect of it, because it's definitely timing the cues with the humor, and that's partially why I didn't watch the show yet, because Martin, one of our main influences, how he handles manga and anime, he pretty much told me like this is one of the all-time favorites. I had to read the manga first, because I feel like if I did the anime, I wouldn't get the gist.
I get it.
And I've been noticing more and more with how this book has been selling lately, because more people getting more into anime or saw the show.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, it's just like Komi, and we talked about this.
Yes.
There's definitely a difference between what's happening and what happened in the manga and what happened in the show.
Yeah.
And when you're reading the manga, you definitely get more from it than when you're watching the anime. And I mean, I think that plays into any kind of like written material
Yeah.
where they just have so much more space.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't want to say, I'm not going to say cheaper in a sense that it to lessen it, but it's less expensive than producing an anime.
Yeah. It's as simple as it can
And
be.
that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It's like creating an anime. Each minute of screen time is a lot more expensive than creating, several pages of an anime
Yeah.
or a manga, because that's one person. Whether there might be a team of, like the inker, the letterer,
Yeah.
of people working on it, there's far more people involved on working on the anime. So I get that it can't translate everything.
Yeah.
And so you will lose something. And I think that's why if you enjoy any one of these shows, going back to the source material might add more richness to it. And I know I don't know about Azuman and Dio because I haven't read that yet.
Yeah.
But definitely with Komi Can't Communicate, there's definitely more layers of detail that you can get.
I agree. I would agree. And Comey has more of a streamline. This one's definitely bubbles. That's what's the fascinating aspect of it. The closest one I could think of that's kind of similar is
Family Circus,
well,
I think it was
for
called.
comic strips, but also the manga and anime Hell Italia.
Oh, okay.
Because Hell Italia has that one joke, one joke, and this is too kind of similar. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
So they play the same joke over and over.
And yeah,
kind of like a running gag throughout the.
But arranged kind of similar, a little bit more similar to Kobayashi, because Kobayashi's like streamlined. It could be all over the place in different manga adventures too, but condensed into one. So
Okay.
the streamline's there. It's just the bubbles are more apparent. So.
All right. So what we'll have to do is after you watch, and I have something similar happening with. Well, I know you're reading this before you watch the manga or the anime.
Yeah.
So I want us to go back when you do after you finish reading the manga.
Yeah.
I want you to watch the anime, and so we'll go back and we'll discuss like what your experience was like.
There you go. I would say it's vouched for it, because I do want to talk like eventually more with characters, because once you see the anime too, the anime translates it better. It's just how it is. That's what happened to Komi too.
So with me, I'm having a similar experience, but I'm actually watching and reading
at the same time.
Yeah. So the one that I'm reading right now is called My Isekai Life.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's about an office worker who gets transported to another world. Surprise, surprise.
Transport. Not truck-coon, transport.
Well.
Oh, there's a truck-coon?
No. But it's very... so the anime decides to do something different. In the manga, it's pretty much straightforward. It's a straightforward isekai.
Yeah.
They're not really... It's the main character, Ryuji, and he is a tamer. So he tames a bunch of slimes. And so in the manga, he has essentially his army of slimes. He has 80 slimes.
Yeah.
That he uses to like essentially do surveillance and help him to battle these different creatures, these different fantasy creatures. And he can use magic and different things through the slimes, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Very unexpected from the people around him. And he's OP. The manga follows a pretty straightforward format. The anime decides to do essentially the first volume as a flashback.
Yeah.
In order to have both. So it jumps forward in the story timeline.
Yeah.
And starts with those adventures, but intermixed with those adventures, they do flashbacks to his essentially the first volume.
Oh.
So yeah.
Okay, kind of like a nice little swerve there.
Yeah, they changed it up. I don't know.
I always wondered about that. Like they just do the swerve so you can follow along, like a circle almost.
It makes it narratively, I think it makes it a little bit different than other isekai.
Yeah.
Because they're like, we don't want to do just like, maybe I think they could have said, oh, we don't want to do just a standard isekai.
Yeah.
We're going to switch it up a little bit to make it a little bit different. And because My Isekai Life, I like it, but it's pretty standard. It's a pretty standard isekai storyline.
But how it's
for the manga.
Yeah,
but it's fun. It's different. It doesn't like break any like molds. It's not like making fun of itself. It's pretty much a straightforward isekai.
Yeah, probably one of the more traditional ones you've seen in a while. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
actually,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that because when I think about Skeleton Knight, for example, I'm like, yeah, the Skeleton Knight. It definitely is kind of meta.
Well, this season, I think we've seen, well, especially this season, I think we've seen a little bit of return to the form
Yeah. Yeah.
where it's like they're not, these aren't parodies or satires. They're not poking fun of themselves. They're not
Yeah.
comedies. They're like, there's another one called Parallel World Pharmacy
Okay.
that's pretty much straightforward, but there's a few differences.
Mm.
And I'll talk about that when we do like our summer review catch up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is very cool in the way that I can see the differences as I'm like watching the show. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting choice. I wonder why they decided to do this. And so it gets me a chance to analyze, like, all right, why did they do this?
Yeah. Good call.
And so, yeah, so I'll be doing that, and maybe we'll talk about it later on. But the manga is really well drawn. The artwork, I really like the artwork. I like the storyline.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not like the most original thing,
Yeah.
but I think if you enjoy isekai, it's really good because you don't have to deal with the harem tropes.
Yeah.
And you don't have to. He's OP, but it's like he doesn't throw it in your face. There's a little bit of cockiness, but just enough where like you're like, all right, cool. Like I like this guy. It's not like some other ones where you're like, I can't stand the guy.
Yeah.
It's like he's pretty much of a cipher for yourself. So,
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. You do have to catch up most of my season or summer, and yeah, that's one of them that I've yet to watch, surprisingly. So
Yeah.
I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, my isekai life. If you like isekai, if you like standard isekai, it's perfect for that. They don't try to infuse it with a bunch of different stuff. They don't try to. It's not a parody or a satire or humorous.
Yeah.
It's just stone cold isekai.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. Thank you,
Yeah.
Edwin. Yeah, that sounds really good.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, for my Wallet Slayer, mind you, summer. What do you think of summer? If you're a weeb or a otaku or a general fan of the arts, you think of con season. So con season's coming up, and yeah,
Con season is here, sir.
well, that's the thing. And yeah, it was like one of those things where once you see it, you're like, why did I see that? And I bought it immediately because this one artist had a commission slot open, and he's not doing any cons near me. So I'm like, all right, this is my quota for the year for him. And his name is Carlos Matsufuji. His tag name is Man Matsu Draws. And yeah, this is a crime because this guy doesn't even have 9,000 followers at the moment. He could triple for all I know by tomorrow. I've seen some artists recently that kind of had that trajectory thanks to tags on social media, and he does wonderful character designs. He recently did Ryu, Morgan. I'm looking at Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Bleach. You got Asuka from Neon Genesis, Yoko from Gurren Lagann, and each one is a tremendous perspective because he does different angles. The shading is tremendous. It's very unique. It's almost like a light gloss kind of look. And I recently got his commission for Makoto from Street Fighter because pretty much half of his resume is Street Fighter characters. Instant follow for Jack, instant love from Jack, instant support from Jack. I'm telling you, like, this guy's worth every penny. And he was very generous to do it on the fly, and he did it in less than a day. I'm like, I definitely have to give him a proper shout out. So thank you, Mad Matsu Draws.
Very cool, Jack.
Yeah.
So I have 2 Wallet Slayers.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's that sigh of like, I want more. I want to get this today.
Oh man, dude. So there's a anime that I watched a couple seasons ago called Bottom Tier Character Tobazaki.
Yes.
And there's 2 of the main characters, Aoi, Hinami, and Minami.
Yes.
And so I bought the pop-up parade figures.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those were relatively inexpensive, and I could afford those. But they have 2 different statues. They have some different statues of them walking. Minami is going down the stairs. Aoi is going up the stairs. They're both over 100 each.
Wow.
And I
was part of the set then.
Well, you'd have to get them together. I mean, you can't just get one.
So that's part of the premise of the show then.
Yeah. But Well, because they're the two main female characters.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't.
Ye-
I'm not gonna get them,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna dream about them.
No. Well, recently after doing our Kill a Kill special, Edwin got Satsuki.
Yeah.
And I got Ryoko. I
Yeah.
found a Papa Parade randomly, and it was really cheap. I'm like,
Yeah.
I grabbed it. So
we did.
So maybe I'll get the other one just to help you out.
Well, they weren't.
Nah.
I mean, I'm not gonna get them. I mean,
Nah.
it's
It's over your budget. Fair enough.
yeah, $150. I'm
Yeah.
just no. I can't do that. I love the characters, but
That's pretty pricey for Papa Parade too.
no, these are not Popper Parade.
Oh.
The Popper Parade, I actually the two.
That's the one you
Yeah,
got.
the two Popper Parades of these figures I actually bought. 'cause
Gotcha,
like I
gotcha.
said, they were relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
And I could get them. I like them. They're nice quality. But of course, the higher priced ones are always better quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we'll post pictures of them on the on Instagram. You guys can check them out. Jack's artwork, the figures that I will dream about buying, but can't afford because they would slay my bank account.
Hey, we're advertising for you, good listeners.
Yeah, 300. I'm not ready to drop $300.
No.
On figures.
And like I said, it's con season, and we haven't even gotten to our favorite
that's
con of
right,
them all,
yeah.
C2E2.
We will be
in
going
Chicago.
to C2E2 in Chicago,
Yeah.
which is coming out. Well, by the time you hear this, we will be there.
And like staying there and hoping for next year or waiting until next year.
Yes, yes,
Alrighty. And now, finally concluding for our general recommends.
yes. And my general recommends actually plays into my Wallace layer, because, like I said, I had watched Bottom Tier Character Dobazaki a few years ago when it came out, and I really liked it, and so I actually rewatched it just recently, and I was like, man, I really like this show. I wonder if it's based off a manga. It's not. It is based off of a light novel series. And I'm like, I'm going to check this out. So the anime covers the first 3 volumes of the light novel.
Mm-hmm.
I have bought all of the rest of them.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I have bought all the rest of them.
I didn't know you bought them. Wow.
I bought them. Not only did I buy them, I've read most of them. I only need to read the most recent one, which is volume number 8.
You did a redive. You just, like me and Edwin are guilty of that. Like I'm doing After the Rain because I just finished the first volume, and that because the high dive, I didn't know it was on high dive. I'm like, oh, there it is. I'll check the first episode. Then I watched 10 of them.
Of course you did. That's the way we are.
That's how it goes.
Oh yeah.
And Edwin with bottom tier. I'm like, okay. And similar to my isekai life, is definitely one. Hey, come on, Jack. If Edwin likes it, you'll like it. So, all right, fair, Edwin, fair. Alrighty, and from my general recommends, this one's an interesting one because we have a theme, we have a thing. I'm more of the music side of things, and for me, it's for my recommendations a musical act, a band, a 3-piece female band. The band's named Hitsuji Bungaku, and I'll try to pronounce it for the life of me. One day I'll get it seamlessly. They're from, of course, Tokyo, Japan. They've had a couple albums since 2011, and they're most notably known for the Heike story, the intro story. You like that song?
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really good song. And the album itself, the debut this past year, is called Our Hope. And the song title itself for Heike story is Hikaru Toki. And it's such a ballad. Like every time I listen to it, the intro gets louder and louder and better. It's one of those rare songs where I'm like, yeah, I had to listen on its own, and on its own is great because the intro itself is only half the song, and how it builds, it still has that streamline, and the chorus and everything just pops and single. And I checked out their discography, seamless. It's one of the best out there, definitely for Japanese rock. So
very cool,
highly recommended.
Very cool, Jack. Yeah. And that's it. That wraps up another episode of the 950 Club.
Thank you for listening. Please like, share,
and subscribe,
and download, and do everything you can, because you're going to have new adventures along the way. We're almost on our 1-year anniversary. Yep,
we've been doing this. I can't believe that we've been at this for almost a year, Jack.
Dear God,
yeah,
it went by fast.
It sure did. But it has been a very fun ride.
Yeah, and I had the best partner to do it with. So
there you go. All right, Jack. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.